Good evening, everyone. My name is Chip Cameron, and to the public meeting tonight. And our topic tonight is the draft environmental impact statement and proposed rule that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has prepared on the subject of waste confidence. And we're not going to use many acronyms tonight. We'll try to be clear for you, but two acronyms that you will hear are NRC for Nuclear Regulatory Commission and EIS for Environmental Impact Statement. And it's my pleasure to serve as your facilitator tonight, and I'm going to be assisted by my co-facilitator. This is Miriam Juckett, right there, and she's with the Center for Nuclear Waste Regulatory Analyses in San Antonio, Texas. And in our role as facilitators, Miriam and I will try to help all of you to have a productive meeting tonight. I just wanted to talk about three meeting process issues so that you'll know what to expect tonight. One is the format for the meeting, the objective for the meeting, introduce the NRC staff to you, and talk about some simple ground rules that will help us to have a productive meeting tonight. In terms of the objective of the meeting, it's fairly simple. The NRC staff is here tonight, and they want to listen to your comments and recommendations on the draft environmental impact statement and proposed rule. The staff will then consider all of those comments as it prepares the final environmental impact statement. As you'll hear from the staff in a few minutes, the NRC is also asking for written comments on these issues. And I just want to assure you that anything that you say to the NRC tonight will carry the same weight as the written comments that come in. And of course, you're free to speak tonight and also submit a written comment to it. In terms of the format for the meeting, after I'm done with these brief remarks, we're going to have some brief introductory statements from the NRC staff, and then we'll have time, a few minutes, for some questions to make sure that you understand the process for commenting on the environmental impact statement. And then we're going to go to all of you to hear your comments tonight. In terms of ground rules, when we get to the comment part of the meeting, I'm going to call three names at a time, and if you could work your way up to these chairs, then we'll keep the process moving. But I'll call your name, and if you could come up to the podium and introduce yourself to us, including any affiliation, if appropriate, and then we'll listen to your comment. The second ground rule, I would ask that only one person at a time speak tonight, and that's important for two reasons, and one of which is so that we can give our complete attention to whomever has the floor. Second reason is so that we can get what I call a clean transcript. We are taking a transcript, and Chad Jackson over here is our stenographer tonight. And if we only have one person speaking at a time, Chad will know who that person is to identify on the transcript. And that transcript is going to be the NRC's record of the meeting, and it's also going to be your record of the meeting, and that will be publicly available. The third ground rule is probably the most important, in that I'm going to ask you to be brief in your comments tonight. The good news is that there's lots of interest in this subject, and it's great to have all of you here to talk to us tonight. We do have about 65 people who want to speak tonight. So I'm going to ask you to follow a 3-minute time limit tonight in your remarks. And that's going to give us an opportunity to hear from all of you tonight. I know even with 3 minutes that we're going to be going beyond the 10 o'clock end time of the meeting, and we're glad to do that. But we do want to try to get out of here sometime before the sun comes up tomorrow. Assuming, it's a big assumption perhaps, assuming that that's going to happen. But I think that 3 minutes are going to give you a chance to share your major concerns with the NRC. And it's also going to give them a chance to start thinking about the recommendations that you're making. And that's important. I apologize in advance if I have to ask you to finish up, because I know that you spend a lot of time preparing your comments for these meetings. My colleague, John Stamatikos, right here, he's also from the Center for Nuclear Waste Regulatory Analysis down in San Antonio, Texas. He's going to help me, and he's going to help you to keep track of the time. And when you have 1 minute left, he's going to hold up this sign, but he will hold it up facing the speaker. Okay. Thank you, John. So that'll alert you to that, and hopefully calling 3 people at a time to come up, that'll also help us to speed up, and hopefully we won't feel like we're on a conveyor belt tonight. But we are looking forward to hearing from you. And luckily, there's ways that you can amplify on your comments. There's the written comments that you can submit. There's something called a feedback form, which is, they're on the chairs, and if you need one, we'll get you one. But this is an NRC evaluation form for public meetings, and it tells the NRC about how public meetings can be improved. But also there's space on here, if you want to write a comment about the draft EIS or proposed rule, you can put it on here, and it's already what they call franked. You don't have to put a stamp on it. You can just put it in the mail, or you can leave it here tonight at the desk, and the NRC staff will pick that up. There's also 2 more public meetings where there'll be an opportunity for people to call in on the phone, toll-free number, and one of those is going to be on November 14th, and the other one is going to be on December 9th, and the NRC staff will tell you more about that. Finally, in terms of ground rules, I would just ask for all of us to be courteous to everybody. You may hear views tonight that you don't agree with, but just respect the person who's giving that particular view. And note that the NRC staff is here tonight to listen to your comments, so they're not going to be responding to your comments tonight. But they are going to carefully consider your comments, and any questions that you might state from the podium, they'll be considering those comments and questions, and they will be documenting how they are responding to those in the final environmental impact statement. And after the NRC presentations, and I'll introduce the staff to you in a minute, we'll have time to just make sure that you understand how you submit comments, the date, where you submit them, any other public meetings. But we won't be able to take any questions on any other subjects because we just don't have the time. But to try to provide some information to you, we have some experts from the NRC, technical staff and legal staff and consultants, and some of these are the authors of parts of the environmental impact statement. They're going to be outside in the foyer for the whole meeting. If a question occurs to you and you need to get an answer, go on and ask them, and they'll answer your question. But note that if you want to get that question or that discussion on the record, you need to put it in your comment up here, because it won't be recorded out there. And I would just thank you, and let me introduce the NRC staff to you, and we can get on with the meeting. I'm going to introduce the two NRC staff who are going to speak to you tonight. First, one is Carrie Safford, who's right here. And Carrie is the Deputy Director of the Waste Confidence Directorate. We're then going to hear from Andy Bowden. And Andy is the Chief of the Communications and Rulemaking Branch in the Waste Confidence Directorate. So they'll be talking to you. And let me introduce some other people to you. Keith McConnell. Keith is the Director of the Waste Confidence Directorate at the NRC. And this is Sarah Price. Sarah is from our Office of General Counsel. And T.R. Rowe, right here, and you've met Susan Whittick, who's at the desk. T.R. and Susan take care of all the logistical arrangements, not only for these meetings, but for everything the Waste Confidence Directorate does. So they make things work, and so thank you for that. And with that, can we go to Carrie? This is Carrie Safford.
Good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. As Chip mentioned, my name is Carrie Safford, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Waste Confidence Directorate at the NRC. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to obtain the public's comments and input on the Waste Confidence Proposed Rule and Draft Generic Environmental Impact Statement. Both of these were published on September 13th. We're going to start off with a brief presentation by Andy Bowden, and we're going to try to keep that limited in time so we can maximize the amount of time that we hear from you folks tonight. And as Chip mentioned, we have our technical experts out in the lobby area, so please feel free to go out and speak with them if you have specific questions about the technical aspects of our documents. I want to start off tonight with just a few general comments on our rulemaking efforts at the NRC. Writing regulations is one of the most important things that we do at the NRC. The regulations are our vehicle for implementing national and international policy and for achieving the NRC's goals of maintaining public health and safety and security and protection of the environment. It's an extremely important activity. Over the past year, the Directorate has been involved in an effort to assess the environmental impacts of the continued storage of spent nuclear fuel beyond a reactor's licensed life for operations. The draft generic environmental impact statement and the proposed rule are the results of that effort. We've strived to provide an open and transparent process, and now we look forward to hearing your comments tonight on the proposed rule and the draft generic environmental impact statement. I also want to point out briefly that in the proposed rule, there are some specific areas, 4 questions to be precise, that the NRC commissioners have asked for your input. There's a handout out in the lobby area as well that lays out the 4 questions for your reference. Your feedback on those questions and all areas in the proposed rule and generic environmental impact statement are valuable for us, and they provide us with valuable information for the Commission during their deliberations before the final rule is published. And finally, I just want to touch on a few brief points on schedule. As everyone here is probably aware, the government was shut down in October. We had to reschedule a number of our public meetings. All of the new meetings have been renoticed, and in light of the new meeting schedule, the deadline for submitting your public comments has been extended to December 20th. The dates and locations and times of all of the new rescheduled meetings have been issued in Federal Register notices, on our website under the Waste Confidence Information tab, and through WC Outreach, which is our email distribution list. So once again, welcome. Thank you for coming out tonight. And now I'll turn it over to Andy Bowden for his presentation.
Good evening. My name is Andy Imboden. I'm the Chief of the Communications, Planning, and Rulemaking Branch at the NRC. And I would like to add to Carrie's welcome. Thank you all for coming here. I'll be going through a slideshow, and if you're interested, hard copies of the slide presentation are available out in the foyer. At tonight's meeting, I will first give a brief history of waste confidence, outline key aspects of the draft generic environmental impact statement and the proposed rule, and explain how you could comment on the documents. Then we'll get to the heart of the meeting, which is the public comment portion. Waste confidence accomplishes two things. It generically addresses the environmental impacts of continued storage and makes a determination about the feasibility of safe storage and the time frame for repository availability. The draft generic environmental impact statement for waste confidence satisfies just part of the Commission's National Environmental Policy Act obligations for reactor licensing and relicensing, and the licensing and relicensing of spent fuel storage facilities. The draft environmental impact statement also serves as the regulatory basis to support changing the waste confidence rule. The environmental impact statement and proposed rule only cover the time frame after a reactor's license has expired. However, it's important to note that the proposed rule on waste confidence does not license any particular site or facility, nor does it allow the long-term storage of spent nuclear fuel at any site. The NRC's history with waste confidence began when the rule was issued in 1984. Since then, the rule has been updated on several occasions, most recently in 2010. In 2012, the rule was challenged, and the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals vacated the 2010 rulemaking. The court identified 3 deficiencies with the Commission's environmental analysis that supported the 2010 waste confidence rule. The court found that the analysis did not evaluate the environmental effects of failing to secure permanent disposal of the spent nuclear fuel. The court also directed the NRC to provide a forward-looking assessment of spent fuel pool leaks and an analysis of spent fuel pool fires. The court stated that a generic approach, either with an environmental assessment or an environmental impact statement, would appropriately address issues associated with waste confidence. Following the court's decision, the Commission directed the staff to go forth with an environmental impact statement evaluating these issues with the possibility of issuing a new waste confidence rule. There are 2 things I'd like for you to remember. The first is that waste confidence is just a small part of the overall environmental review for reactor or storage facility licensing. Secondly, the waste confidence rule does not license any facility or authorize storage after the expiration of a facility's license. The draft statement describes the impacts of continuing to store spent nuclear fuel beyond the license life for operation of a reactor, whether in spent fuel pools or at independent spent fuel storage installations located at both reactor and away from the reactor sites. The draft statement describes why the NRC is revising waste confidence. It discusses the alternatives that were considered. It describes how the environmental impacts were evaluated. It describes what facilities are covered and the environmental impacts of continued storage at reactor sites and away from reactor sites. It also contains information on the costs of the alternatives to the rulemaking. It describes the cumulative environmental impacts of continued storage, and it contains information on the feasibility of a repository and the feasibility of safe storage of the spent fuel. The draft statement assessed impacts of continued spent fuel storage for 3 timeframes based on when a repository would become available. The first time frame is the short-term time frame, or 60 years following license expiration. The second is long-term, which would be 100 years beyond the short term, for a total of 160 years following license expiration. The other scenario was indefinite storage, where no repository becomes available. The draft statement serves as the regulatory basis for the proposed rule. The proposed rule would generically address the environmental impacts of continued storage. These impacts would not be revisited in future site-specific licensing actions unless the NRC discovers something about the site that would make the application of the conclusions in the environmental impact statement inappropriate. The proposed rule would revise the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's regulations. Specifically, the citation is Title 10 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 51.23. The proposed rule states that the analysis supports the Commission's determinations that it is feasible to safely store spent nuclear fuel following license life for reactor operations. It also states that it is feasible to have a mined geologic repository within 60 years following the license life for operation of a reactor. We are specifically seeking comment on whether the final rule should contain these last two statements. There are several ways to comment. To ensure that your comments are considered, they must be received by December 20th, 2013. Mailed comments must be postmarked by December 20th. All comments, whether submitted in writing or provided orally, are considered equally. Some have commented already, and others will comment later. And we're here tonight so you can tell us your comments on the generic environmental impact statement and proposed rule. Tonight's comments are being transcribed and will be considered part of the record. You can also leave written comments with the NRC staff located at the registration table, and we will make sure that those comments are added to the docket as well. You may email, fax, mail your comments to the NRC. You may also provide comments using the federal e-rulemaking website, www.regulations.gov. That concludes the NRC's presentation, and thank you for your attention. Chip?
Okay, thank you, Andy. Thank you, Carrie. I just want to make sure that the process for submitting comments, the public meetings where you can call in, schedule, are there any questions on that tonight before we go out to all of you for comments?
I have a question.
Okay. And just introduce yourself to us, please.
I'm Ellen Thomas, and I was wondering, when I submit comments this evening, does this mean that I can submit any future comments, or can I say if I see something that I want to add to my comments, I can do that until December 20th?
Oh, yes, Ellen, you can submit comments, and in fact, one of the reasons why the NRC has these meetings before the end of the comment period is because you might hear something from the NRC speakers or from other people in the audience that will give you an idea about commenting. So actually, encourage people to submit written comments also. But good question. Thank you, Ellen. Anybody else before we get started? Okay, great. Well, I'm going to call 4 names, and it's not a requirement to come up and sit in these chairs, okay, if you're already near the front. It's just a device to give you time to get up here if you're way in the back. But our first 4 speakers are going to be Lou Zeller, Mary Olson, Jeff Archie, and Jeff Merrifield. So, Lou, are you in here? Yes. Okay, Lou's our first speaker. And as I mentioned, John in the front row will be keeping for us.
Thank you. My name is Lou Zeller. I'm Executive Director of the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League. We have active chapters and projects in 6 southeastern states. Many of our members are here tonight, for example, from the state of Georgia and other southeastern states. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. On behalf of the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League, which was founded in 1984, I submit the following comments. After reviewing the draft documents, we have the following observations and recommendations. 1, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission should abandon the waste confidence rule. Because it is a general rule, it cannot apply to the 65 different commercially operated nuclear power plant sites across the nation. Each site is different and should be treated as such. There should be individual plant environmental impact statements for all 65. Number 2, so-called independent spent fuel storage installations would be de facto nuclear waste dumps. The generic waste confidence rule would be based on finding one or more waste sites which would be located in economically stressed communities. Potential sites would be in the southeast, could be such as Savannah River, or in the west, Native American land such as Yucca Mountain. This is fundamentally unjust. Number 3, long-term storage of radioactive waste at nuclear power plant sites should be done in dry, secure canisters. The industry which made the waste and profited from it should manage it. And storage on site at nuclear power plants represents the least hazard to public health in the area, both near the reactors and along transport routes. One of the most distressing things in this environmental impact statement is the fact that it is generic. This is a term which flies in the face of the facts of the matter, as I've just outlined. But one of the particulars is that in the assessment, the proposed rule would make amendments. The proposed rule would also clarify that the generic determination applies to a license renewal for independent spent fuel storage installation. No, it would not license such a facility, but the generic environmental impact statement would apply to a temporary storage site if one were to be located in South Carolina at the Savannah River site, perhaps one of the leading contenders for such a site. That would mean high-level nuclear waste trucked all over the United States through Highway 77, on Highway 85, bound for the Savannah River site, and exposing people all along the way. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission should abandon the generic approach. It should heed the advice and the direct order of the United States Circuit Court for the District of Columbia. Thank you for the opportunity.
Final comment?
That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much. And Mary Olson.
My name is Mary Olson. I'm the Southeast Regional Coordinator for Nuclear Information and Resource Service. And I am so thrilled that this room is so full. And I know we have diverse views, but it's so important in our country that we have the full discussion. Every day of my life, high-level radioactive waste has been generated. And every 10 years of my life, there has been a major reactor accident which took that which was fuel and rendered it to that which must be called waste. And quite frankly, we have to add to this generic environmental impact statement the consideration of all phases of this material, not only those that are assemblies in pools or in casks. So that said, I'm wanting to just back up for a moment and say that Nuclear Information Resource Service will be filing organizational comments in writing. So I am joining the dialogue tonight, mostly on behalf of myself as an individual, but in resonance with people that I work with all over this United States and with so many of my friends who are here tonight who have come out, and I thank them for that. So this radioactive waste has been made every day of my life. We have nothing to do with it except for letting it pile up. It's piling up where it was made, and if you move it, it's just going to pile up there too. That is all we have for an answer right now. And in my childhood, I heard about nuclear madness. Maybe it was mutually assured destruction madness, or maybe it was Helen Caldecott having the courage to stand up ahead of many of us and say, making this waste on a daily basis that we don't know what to do with is madness. But here I am in the 5th decade of my life, and I'm here to celebrate some sanity. I can't call it nuclear sanity because that's an oxymoron for me. But I'm going to name a few names, and then I'll be done. But we have a federal judge, a panel of 3 guys, who said, I don't buy this scam. And that's why we're here tonight. He said, I don't buy this scam. And then Fukushima happened, and he said, no, I really don't know that we have a solution, so I'm vacating the rule. Thank you very much. Sanity. Wow. We have a president who said that dump's no good, and had the courage, unlike previous presidents, to say Yucca Mountain's off the table. Amazing. A geological level event from the White House. We have a Senate Majority Leader who's sticking up for democracy. The people of Nevada don't want that waste. We have a Prime Minister who was in charge when the earthquake and tsunami hit, and he's now brave enough to stand up as Prime Minister can and say, nuclear is not the answer. We have to phase it out. We have Prime Minister Merkel, who said the same thing. By 2022, Germany will be nuclear free. And finally, we have former NRC Chair Greg Yatsko, someone I've worked with in various capacities for many years, who now has the courage and the sanity to stand up and agree with me and many of us in this room that the only solution for radioactive waste is to stop making any more of it, and that darn little vacation that your rule has should become a nice permanent little chalet and no more nuclear licenses. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Next, we're going to hear from Jeff Archer and then Jeff Merrifield, and then we're going to go to Dawn Safer and Steve Nesbitt and Susan Porter. Go ahead, Jeff.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Archie, and I'm Senior Vice President and Chief Nuclear Officer for South Carolina Electric and Gas. South Carolina Electric and Gas provides service to 659,000 electric customers in South Carolina, covering 25 counties. I appreciate the opportunity to provide comments this evening on the Draft Waste Confidence Rule and GEIS. I also want to commend the NRC's efforts to encourage and engage the public through a number of public meetings and other venues. Over my 30-plus years in the nuclear industry, I've witnessed the NRC's efforts to ensure public engagement and transparency, and this meeting is yet another example of that commitment. In my role as Chief Nuclear Officer, I am accountable for oversight of our current nuclear operations as well as supporting oversight of our new nuclear construction activities. South Carolina Electric and Gas owns and operates the V.C. Summer Unit 1 nuclear station in Jenkinsville, South Carolina, which is located approximately 30 miles north of Columbia, the state's capital. This plant has operated safely for 30 years, providing emission-free electric power to customers in our service territory. Since bringing V.C. Summer Unit 1 online in 1984, we have demonstrated the ability to store used fuel safely in our wet fuel storage pool located on site. We have extremely competent, well-qualified individuals that provide oversight of fuel-related activities, and we have not had any events that have challenged the safety of the public or our employees. We are currently building an integrated spent fuel storage installation that will in the future allow fuel to be transported from our wet spent fuel storage location to a dry storage location when wet storage capacity is exhausted. We have benchmarked extensively with other utilities in the U.S. to ensure we benefit from the knowledge gained by organizations that have implemented dry spent fuel storage successfully for many, many years. The demonstration of safe nuclear plant operation and spent fuel management at V.C. Summer has been a part of the foundation for the strong public support we've received over the years. I am especially proud of the fact that a recent survey commissioned by the Nuclear Energy Institute and conducted by Biscayne Research Incorporated showed that 90% of our neighbors that live within the 10-mile radius of the plant had favorable impressions of the plant and how it is operated. Our ability to ensure and demonstrate excellence in plant operation was one of the primary drivers in our decision to build 2 new Westinghouse AP1000s adjacent to our existing Unit 1 plant. These reactors, VC Summer Units 2 and 3, received a combined operating and construction license from the NRC in March of 2012. We expect to bring Unit 2 online in late 2017 or first quarter 2018, and we are well on our way to achieving that goal. Construction activities for VC Summer Units 2 and 3 have gone very well, with a number of significant milestones achieved to date. Recently, we completed the foundation preps and required rebar installations for both units and completed installation of first nuclear concrete for both units, having finished the concrete pour for Unit 3 just this morning.
And Jeff, could you finish up for us, please?
Sure. The Unit 3 concrete pour was a continuous pour lasting approximately 43 hours with the placement of approximately 7,000 cubic yards of concrete. Safe, reliable electric generation is a high priority for our customers in South Carolina. Industry currently located in our state, as well as industry considering locating in our state, need to have confidence that not only we can satisfy their energy needs today, but we are also committed to having economical baseload energy generation to meet their long-term needs in the future. The proposed waste confidence rule and generic environmental impact statement support the efforts of our company to deliver safe, reliable, and emission-free power to our customers long into the future. It will also support efforts by other utilities that are working to license new reactors to support their strategic objectives. We support the NRC's efforts this evening, and we support the agency moving forward with the proposed waste confidence rule and generic impact statement.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeff. This is Jeff Merrifield.
Thank you, Chip, and the NRC staff. My name is Jeff Merrifield. I'm a resident of Davidson, North Carolina, where I live with my wife and 3 children within the 10-mile emergency planning zone of Duke McGuire Nuclear Station. Tonight, I'm speaking as a former commissioner of the NRC, having served from October of 1998 through June of 2007. During that time, I visited all 104 operating nuclear installations in the U.S. and over half of the world's 440 operating nuclear facilities. I'm currently employed by CB&I, which is an EPC company located in Charlotte that is in the process of building 8 nuclear units in the U.S. and in China. However, my remarks this evening reflect my personal views. As an NRC commissioner, I clearly saw that U.S. nuclear power plant operators take used fuel very seriously. Whether stored in a pool or in a dry canister, that fuel receives the highest level of attention to ensure its long-term safety and security. As a result of 9/11 in Fukushima, the nuclear industry has taken a series of measures to enhance the safety of these facilities. In my view, these efforts have reinforced the high level of assurance that this fuel can be safely managed on-site or off well after the lifetime of a nuclear plant. I had the opportunity to visit Yucca Mountain in Nevada twice, as well as the highly successful Waste Isolation Pilot Project, otherwise known as WIP, which is a Department of Energy facility 2,500 feet underground in New Mexico, in a salt dome currently being used to store high-activity transuranic nuclear waste. All the information I received regarding Yucca Mountain as a commissioner led me to the conclusion that it is an appropriate and safe facility to permanently dispose of used fuel. While the political process in Washington has delayed the NRC staff from filing its final safety report, I am highly confident that the NRC will eventually validate the safety of Yucca Mountain and allow DOE to meet its statutory responsibility to provide a permanent used fuel storage facility. Further, the demonstrated success of the WIP facility strongly underscores the ability of our nation to identify, permit, and operate a high-level waste facility to address the long-term management of used fuel, irrespective of Yucca Mountain. I also believe that temporary away-from-reactor storage can be successfully utilized as an interim solution for used fuel. In February of 2006, the NRC issued a license to build a private fuel storage facility in Utah, which was an interim dry storage site for 44,000 metric tons of used fuel 50 miles outside of Salt Lake City. While PFS did not move forward, this licensing process clearly showed the ability of the NRC to review and approve such a site, and has prompted a number of communities in our country to consider volunteering to host a similar facility in the future. The NRC and its staff would be congratulated for addressing these issues in a generic manner rather than using a site-specific methodology. This approach to addressing the waste confidence decision is consistent with the NRC's responsibility to carry out its mission thoroughly and efficiently. It is also consistent with the NRC's principle of good regulation, which state, quote, where several effective alternatives are available, the option which minimizes the use of resources should be adopted, unquote. In closing, I'd say three things. First, I believe the basis for the draft waste confidence rule is as valid today as the time when I was a commissioner, and I also believe it is consistent with the draft environmental impact statement of which we discussed tonight. Second, our nation should meet its legal obligation to take permanent responsibility for used fuel by completing the licensing and construction of Yucca Mountain. Third, and finally, nuclear power is a safe, carbon-free, and reliable form of energy that provides the foundation for our nation's electric grid. As expected in the Atomic Energy Act, the NRC should efficiently provide for the continuing licensing of this safe and proven technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And we're going to hear from Don Safer next.
I didn't hear that. What?
I wouldn't worry about it. I'd just go ahead and.
I'm Don Safer. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm board chairman of the Tennessee Environmental Council. I thought this topic was important enough to drive from Nashville and address the assembled, and I'm glad to see such a big crowd as well. I want to start by dedicating my words to the victims of this energy, this nuclear power, and nuclear weapons that of the past, the present, and the future. This is a technology that kills, maims, and creates birth defects. Those are the facts. We have a responsibility to the future. That's why we're here tonight. All of us agree that this waste must be safely protected from the atmosphere, from the biosphere, basically forever. This is a very serious proposition. The draft GEIS is completely inadequate, all 585 pages of it. It needs to be started over. It's full of questionable assumptions that go from questionable to not even beginning to be credible. It does not satisfy the Nuclear Waste Policy Act or the federal court order. It took a federal court order to throw out this rule and start this process because the NRC would not do it itself. And this document is more of the same stuff. One of the most tenuous assumptions is 100% success at keeping this waste contained for the centuries, for the eons, for the million years that it needs to be contained. These assumptions have proven to be false at Chernobyl and Fukushima. We need to stop making this waste. We need to deal with the 70,000 metric tons already made. In the GEIS, this draft, it says it's a potential environmental, it analyzes potential environmental impacts that could occur as a result of the continued storage of spent nuclear fuel. I don't see that in here. I see a whitewash. I see the murdering of logic in the assumptions and that the storage of this fuel, the institutional control, the canisters being replaced every 100 years, the independent spent fuel storage installations, the dry transfer system, all of that stuff going on forever? Really? The Roman Empire would have had to have maintained that level of control if they had made this type of waste. That's not going to happen. I'm sorry. Human history does not support it. Just moving, this whole probabilistic risk mitigation and assessment, it's just mumbo-jumbo mangling of logic to make it seem that the risk on paper is small, and it just does not do that. Just in conclusion, I assume I'm out of time. While it is true that paper will block alpha radiation, the reams of paper being used in this bureaucratic process will not enhance public safety. I'm sure the Japanese went through this whole process, something very similar. Look at how it's protecting the people and the biota in the Pacific Ocean.
Okay, thank you. And next we're going to hear from Steve Nesbitt.
Good evening. My name is Steve Nesbitt, and I'm the Director of Nuclear Policy for Duke Energy. We operate 11 nuclear power reactors in North and South Carolina, and we oversee a recently shut down nuclear power plant in Florida. In addition, we're applying for combined construction and operating licenses for new nuclear power plants in South Carolina and Florida. First, let me thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on the draft Waste Confidence EIS and proposed rule. It's a very important rulemaking on the part of the NRC. I appreciate the extent to which the NRC has gone to gather public input on it. Thank you for holding one of your public meetings in Charlotte, which is the center of a large and growing hub of energy-related industry and education here in the Southeast. Nuclear power is an essential part of the energy mix in this region. Second, we endorse the proposed waste confidence rule. The NRC properly concludes that reactor operators can safely store used fuel after shutting down until the federal government carries out its responsibility to dispose of the material. The nuclear industry in general, and Duke Energy in particular, have extensive operational experience that supports this conclusion. The history of used fuel storage goes back to the beginning of the nuclear enterprise in the 1940s, and there has never been an instance in which a member of the public was harmed by used fuel storage. Duke Energy began its nuclear power plant operations more than 40 years ago. Since that time, we've safely stored used fuel in spent fuel pools, as well as in dry storage facilities. In addition, we safely transported thousands of fuel assemblies between reactor sites. At no time have these activities resulted in harm to the public or significant adverse environmental impacts. The NRC performed a thorough and extensive evaluation of projected future impacts from used fuel storage and found them to be small. We agree with the NRC's conclusion. I'd like to take the opportunity to say a couple of things about how we store used fuel. Immediately after discharge from the reactor, the fuel is stored in large pools filled with hundreds of gallons of water. The pools are robust concrete structures with stainless steel liners. The water removes decay heat passively and provides shielding from radiation. We've never had a situation in which we needed to provide emergency makeup water to one of our pools, but we have the equipment, procedures, and training for doing so if necessary. After years in the pool, the decay heat drops significantly and the fuel is cool enough to be loaded into dry storage. We place the assemblies in steel canisters surrounded by large concrete overpacks for shielding and protection. The dry storage systems are thick and massive, weighing hundreds of thousands of pounds. Completely passive natural circulation of the atmosphere is all that is required to cool the dry storage systems. Both methods of storage, wet and dry, have been proven to be safe through analyses as well as decades of operating experience. Finally, I must emphasize how important it is the NRC complete this rulemaking in a timely manner. The court remand of the waste confidence rule led to a suspension of NRC licensing activities. Nuclear power is an important source of safe, economical, carbon emissions-free electricity now and in the future. Our country needs this 24/7 baseload source of electricity. Completing the waste confidence rulemaking will allow the NRC to fulfill its obligation to license and oversee nuclear facilities. Thank you again for holding the meeting in Charlotte and for the opportunity to provide these comments.
Thank you. Thank you. Susan Porter. If Susan is in the room and here she comes up, and while she's coming up, our next speakers are going to be Charles Utley, Willie Tomlin, Courtney Campus, and Julius Kern. This is Susan.
Good evening. Thanks to the NRC for holding these public meetings. My name is Susan Corbett. I am the chair of the South Carolina chapter of the Sierra Club. I'm also chair of the National Sierra Club Nuclear Free Campaign. We are submitting written comments to the NRC. So tonight I'm going to speak a little more from my own personal experience. You know, South Carolina is heavily involved in nuclear from all ends of the spectrum, from fuel enrichment to manufacturing to waste disposal. However, we have found that it's not very clean, it's not very safe, and it certainly is not very affordable. South Carolina now has the highest utility rates from Washington, D.C. to Texas. I want to say a little bit about the National Sierra Club Nuclear Free Campaign. The Sierra Club has been on record for many decades questioning the need for nuclear power. Tomorrow morning on CNN, National Sierra Club Director Michael Brune will be debating the director of Pandora's Promise to expose the propaganda, the mistruths, half-truths, and lies about the future and the need for the future of nuclear power in our country. In South Carolina, like I said, we're very concerned about nuclear waste. We have 7 operating reactors. I don't think any of the fuel at BC Summer has left the pool. I don't think there's any in dry cast, so that pool has got to be pretty full. We have a low-level site at Barnwell. It's been leaking for decades. It's been migrating underground, contaminating nearby groundwater and streams. And of course, we have the Savannah River site, which is an ongoing problem. I question this idea of a one-size-fits-all impact statement. In South Carolina, we have such a diversity of reactors with so many different conditions. For example, up at Oconee, which is in the northwestern part of the state, the NRC has determined that there's a safety risk there because it sits on the edge of a lake that has an earthen dam. And there was an earthquake, and South Carolina is an earthquake-prone state. We just had one the other day, actually. That dam would break, and a Fukushima-type event would happen. The county would be swamped. So I don't know how you can do a one-size-fits-all when you have so many different reactor sites and things going on. I think it's also problematic to think that communities are going to take spent fuel storage indefinitely. We just had a situation down at the Savannah River site because there was a proposal brought to the Citizens Advisory Board asking them to sign off on Savannah River site being used as interim storage. And after many months of discussions, the Citizens Advisory Board voted 17-6 opposing any spent fuel storage in Savannah River site. So I know I need to go. I would just like to say that we don't think this is a streamlining process. We're afraid this is a steamrolling process. And you cannot cut the public out of these future discussions. That would be a wrong thing to do. We need to be involved in this every step of the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Charles Utley from Shell Bluff, Georgia, the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League, and for my children and my granddaughter, I come before you tonight. And as I look at what we're calling this, a GEIS, and I like to take it personal. And I say that because I left at home my lovely wife who just had a total knee replacement. But thank God I didn't ask him for a generic doctor. I didn't ask him to send me to a generic pharmacy. And I didn't ask him to send me to anybody but the best. And that's the same way I feel about this proposal. You're asking the future to live up to something that's going to fit everybody. Doesn't matter where they live, who they are, where they come from, or where they're going. You and I both know that is impossible. Savannah River site has leaking taking place as I stand. Plant Vogel shut down last week, and it was reported on national television, but locally it said, oh, it just shut off. And yet we're going to consider what I would call in kindergarten a pattern to fit all, when you cut one little cookie pattern, and it'll fit everybody. My brothers and sisters, it just won't work. Let us deal with the facts and as they are and what they stand for. You and I both know that our future cannot afford 60 or 160 in one container? I don't think so, and you know it doesn't. So let us be real with ourselves and go back and do what we've been asked to do. Take it away from the table. Redevelop what it is and what we know. You all are smart enough to come up with something better than this. Even our court system realized it. From Washington down, and let us go back and do what we need to do. Bring back something that the public can take hold to. And because three major things, and I want you to listen to them, that one is they leak constantly. They shut down when they have the will or want to. And the cost is astronomical. But let me take that off the table. Because the nuke is a way of nuclear warfare. What I'm saying is not your dollars. It's all of our taxpayers' dollars. When you get to the point where you have to dig in your own pockets, then you'll come up with something better. And what I'm saying to you tonight, I don't want that 8-month-old grandchild of mine to pick up this waste cost. So let's end it now. And I know I've used my time, but I want to make sure you hear me loud and clear. Take it back from where it came from.
Roy Tomlin here, and then we're going to go to Courtney. Courtney, oh, here's Willie. And then we'll go to Courtney. And then Julius. This is Willie Tomlin.
Good evening. My name is Willie Tomlin, and I'm from Georgia as well, Burke County area, Shell Bluff community. I've pastored in Burke County for the last 40 years, and I try to keep up with what goes on in the southern part of our country. As we all well know, of the 104 reactors there are in the country, 60 of those from the south, and many of them have been there since the 50s, and they are under what I would refer to as a strain, for the simple reason, as we all recognize, that particularly those of us with white hair, that you don't exist long on the planet before change comes. And the same thing is true with everything that God has created. Change does come. And the same, so therefore, with these aged reactors, we need to come up with a better way, or totally delete or elite the method that we're using to produce electricity. I'm one of those who believe that in this age in which we live, that our technology most definitely can exceed something that we came up 2 centuries ago. I am one of those who believe that if we would put our minds to it, give some dedication to it, that we will not only change our method of producing electricity for the citizens of this country, give some consideration to the health and hazard that, as Reverend Utley has mentioned, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren are potentially going to have to deal with. Whatever method we come up with is a threat to the future generation, particularly if it pertains to nuclear. My last statement is this, and that is, I wish we would sincerely give some consideration to the generations to come, and not so much based on what the technology is now, because when the next generation comes, they will most definitely have other ideas and other methods, just as we have come from the kerosene lanterns to where we are now. We have no idea what method the next generation will do. So how are we going to assume that we can contain something that has the life of 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 years? To God be the glory.
Hello, my name is Courtney Tampus, and I'm a probabilistic safety assessment engineer at VC Summer Nuclear Station, operated by South Carolina Electric and Gas. My group is responsible for ensuring that the plant operates in a safe configuration at all times using a mathematical model that accurately reflects the physical configuration of the plant. The focus of nuclear power is always on protecting the health and safety of the public and the safety of our employees. Our safety culture is like our personality, and thinking safety first is just how we are wired to respond. Every nuclear plant has subject matter experts in every area to ensure that the choices and changes we make always reflect our commitment to safety. My group has over 100 years of combined expertise in nuclear technology. Nuclear is also a thriving industry. New graduates are entering the nuclear industry every year, and at VC Summer Unit 1, 35% of our staff has been in the industry for less than 5 years. We have all committed to making nuclear energy a safe and abundant source of energy for the public, because in energy, diversity is the key. Nuclear is important to the energy security of the United States. I am personally passionate about my commitment to the nuclear industry. My goal is to educate. I want you to know my views, know all of the facts, and make informed decisions regarding nuclear power. I have a great sense of pride for my projects at VC Summer Units 2 and 3 and for this reawakening of nuclear power. I encourage everyone in the audience to educate themselves on the benefits and challenges of nuclear power along with other green technologies and make the decision for themselves. I believe that the U.S. nuclear facilities will continue to safely handle and store used nuclear fuel for the timeframes discussed in the draft environmental impact statement. I also believe that the NRC should complete the review of the Yucca Mountain repository. Both of these are solutions that can be used to ensure the used fuel management security of the nuclear industry. Thank you.
And after Julia, we're going to go to Robert Howard and Bill Horwick and Ryan Burkhart. This is Julius.
My name is Julius Kerr. I'm from Alamance County, North Carolina, a native, born in Raleigh. I'm also a volunteer for Brettle and a member of the new chapter, Neighborhood Environment Watch. I live about 30 miles from Sharon Harris Nuclear Plant. My wife of 43 years, my 2 children, my 4 grandchildren, and my newborn great-grandson also live within 30 miles of Sharon Harris. That's why I'm here today. I'm protecting my family and their loved ones. That's what fathers do. I'm also a United States Air Force disabled veteran. Even though you don't make it easy, I get to these meetings that are so far removed from the problem. I planned for weeks to be here to do this. It's hard for me to drive here and to stand up here and speak out against nuclear hazard. but I do it. I must do it. I'm protecting my home, my state, and my country. That's what veterans do. Yes, it's hard for me to get to the meetings, but I'm on a mission. I want you to know that North Carolina citizens do not want Sharon Harris to continue to store dangerous, irradiated nuclear fuel in overcrowded and unprotected cooling pools. How did North Carolina come to provide a home for the 4 largest overcrowded cooling pools in the country? Why didn't we get to say something about this before it happened? Most people don't even know the danger of these pools. But you do, don't you? It's your responsibility to protect the public health by transferring this nuclear waste to dry cask storage. You must make it a national security top priority. I have no confidence in your waste confidence. And while you're at it, expand the emergency planning zones and include the people. Enlarge the planning zone to 50 miles, not 10 miles. We're between those 2 zones, and we do not feel safe. And finally, stop the secretly moving nuclear waste from here to there. Don't use our highways, rails, and waterways for such dangerous and unnecessary projects. Stop putting the industry's profit and convenience over the safety of the people and the environment. I'm angry about this, but I still pray for you. And I pray that you will do the right thing. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Dr. Robert Howard. Oh. There it is. And then we'll go to this is Robert Howard.
Good evening. I'm Robert Howarth from Asheville, North Carolina. I'm now retired from a career as an electro-optical engineer. I have the degree of Master of Science in Engineering, and I'm a member of the Western North Carolina Physicians for Social Responsibility, a member of the Union of Concerned Scientists, and a tax-paying citizen of the United States. I previously testified to the Blue Ribbon Commission in January 2012 and in January 2011 regarding proposed reprocessing program for the Savannah River site and for the draft EIS for William States Lee, respectively. Safe containment for eternity must be the objective and the mission of your containment work. With half-lives for radioactive nuclear waste ranging from 30 years for strontium and cesium to some 24,000 years for plutonium-239, and time till permissible human exposure, which is 10 times half-life, it follows with those kinds of times that a necessary corollary is the making of toxic nuclear waste must be reduced to zero. In our physical world, we sometimes cannot achieve the ideal, but often we can and do approach it very closely. There are some good uses for nuclear energy, for example, in medicine and in astronautics. But we know that bombs and weapons are not included on the short list. Neither are nuclear power plants. There are better means than these to provide the needs for life on our shared Earth. In achieving self-containment for eternity and satisfying the necessary corollary of making zero toxic nuclear waste, we also can greatly reduce and in effect cap the magnitude of safe storage space needed. This will save money, helping alleviate our national debt burden, as well as requiring less off-limits posted land. I encourage you at NRC to make hardened on-site storage a significant component of your recommendations. Not only does HOS eliminate the costs of transit and the dangers to public health from inevitable accidents, spills, leaks, fires on our highways, but it keeps the toxic waste where it already is, already posted and off-limits secured sites. These sites will be with us for a long time, even after nuclear power generation is phased out. I urge you at NRC to bear in mind and to emphasize the merit of satisfying our necessary corollary and HOS in forming your proposals for nuclear waste containment and storage. Our long-term health and sustainability depends on it. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Bill Herwig. I'm the supervisor of nuclear design and analysis at the V.C. Summer Nuclear Station, which is operated by the South Carolina Electric and Gas Company. My group is responsible for the safe handling and storage of new and used nuclear fuel. I appreciate the opportunity to provide input to the important topic of used fuel management. We currently safely store our used fuel assemblies in our used fuel storage pool. We have taken steps to assure the long-term safety of used fuel stored in our pool. In 2003, we replaced all of the storage racks with an improved neutron absorber. We also have an ongoing surveillance program to monitor the long-term performance of this material during the wet storage of our used fuel. Summer Unit 1 is currently making the transition to dry fuel storage. By being one of several nuclear plants that have yet to implement dry fuel storage, we have been able to take advantage of the successful operating experience of other plants with many years of dry storage experience. We've also been able to take advantage of technical advances in the design and processing of fuel storage systems, and will implement a state-of-the-art dry storage system. Our current plan is to load our first dry storage systems in 2015. I firmly believe that we will continue to safely handle and store used fuel in the wet and dry configurations in the 3 timeframes mentioned in the draft EIS. However, I also firmly believe that the NRC should complete the review of the Yucca Mountain license application submitted by the Department of Energy. Pending a positive review of the application, construction and operation of the Yucca Mountain facility should proceed as a national priority in accordance with the Waste Policy Act. There is a safe and effective solution to used fuel management. We just need to implement it. Thank you for your time and have a good evening.
Thank you, Bill. Brian Brookhart, and then we'll go to Thomas Roden.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Brookhart, and although I am a member of the nuclear industry, I am speaking here this evening, my own opinions basically, as a father, a veteran, American Nuclear Society member, all those things that lots of other people have opposite opinions that I might have. So again, I thank the NRC for running such an open forum where we can have the free exchange of ideas, and I would encourage everyone, I think it's been mentioned a couple of times here, to research all of the facts that you hear tonight, both in support of the ruling and against the ruling. So I encourage the NRC to complete the Waste Confidence EIS rulemaking. This is an important part of our future for nuclear power, and as I said, I'm a father and a veteran, and like the other gentlemen here and those in the crowd, as a veteran, I'm concerned about the future of the country, and I'm concerned about the future for my children as well. But without an environmentally clean, economical method to produce electricity, nuclear power, I fear that they will be living in caves with nothing to do. So that's kind of my position on nuclear power. I think it's a clean method for production of energy for the future. The NRC is reviewing this waste confidence rule, and I again encourage them to complete the rulemaking to allow them to resume issuing licenses and continue to process installations. Some of the specifics that you wanted comments on, as far as timeline for repository availability, I don't believe that there should be reference to a repository made in the rule, because that will unintentionally tie us to that as part of the waste solution for perpetuity. There are other methods for taking care of nuclear waste or spent fuel through reprocessing, through other utilizations, and mentioning it in the rule will only hamper those developments in the future. Second, information from the generic environmental impact statement should be referenced but not repeated in the text of the rule. Again, those crossing of references in federal regulations only makes it more complicated for people to understand what's really going on. Third, streamlining of clarity is always an improvement to any regulation. So on the third question of whether you should streamline the text in the ruling, I certainly encourage you to do that. Again, for the reasons stated before, government regulations are complicated enough to understand. If you can do anything to streamline it, I would encourage it. And again, I would support or would encourage the NRC to move towards reprocessing, and in the interim, a long-term storage facility is certainly an advantage to the nation for today and for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you very much. Thomas Rodak, and then we're going to go to Sally Neidel, Ken Neidel, Amanda Lang, and Anna Hall.
Hi, I'm Tom Rodak, Director of Licensing and Engineering Programs in the Nuclear Fuel Organization at Westinghouse Electric Company. Westinghouse has provided products and services and technology to the nuclear industry since they provided the first commercial reactor in the United States in 1957. Today, Westinghouse is working here in the Southeast to build 4 of our advanced AP1000 nuclear reactors. We're also building 4 more in China. And today, in Columbia, South Carolina, our nuclear fuel factory is building fuel that our customers are using to generate 10% of this nation's electricity safely, reliably, and carbon-free. I've worked my entire career in the nuclear industry on the design, the licensing, and the manufacturing of nuclear fuel. And I can personally attest to the high standards, the technical rigor, and the overriding commitment to safety in the U.S. nuclear industry. I want to thank the NRC for the opportunity tonight to provide these comments. I commend the NRC on the transparency of this rulemaking process, and I applaud your scheduling of these meetings around the country to get stakeholder feedback. I'll make my remarks short and to the point. First, it makes sense to evaluate generic issues on a generic basis. It's the most efficient use of our regulatory resources, and we should use those resources efficiently. Second, the draft generic environmental impact statement is a comprehensive assessment of the impact of the long-term storage of spent nuclear fuel. It's based on reasonable assumptions, and it's based on current technology. And finally, the draft generic environmental impact statement provides a sound basis, both technically and on a regulatory framework, for the conclusion that it's technically feasible to store spent fuel on an indefinite long-term basis safely and securely. I urge the NRC to continue on a priority basis with this rulemaking process. There are no technical barriers to the safe, secure, long-term storage of spent nuclear fuel. Thank you again for the opportunity to make these comments.
And then we're going to go to Ken. Here's Sally coming up.
Thank you for having this hearing. My name's Sally Neidel. I'm a biologist. I'm from Charlotte. I'm a volunteer with Greenpeace and NC Warren. And just last night in Charlotte, we had a big solar meeting. And I really wish that's where we were headed. I think that is where we're headed. But tonight we're talking about nuclear. I was excited for a moment when I heard that the NRC had been ordered to set aside its waste confidence policy and assess the environmental impacts of nuclear waste. But after reading through the draft of the new policy, my excitement quickly evaporated. I'm a realist. I've spoken at a lot of energy hearings, and one thing I've learned is that government agencies and commissions that are supposed to be protecting the public are generally controlled by the corporations they're supposed to be regulating. Along those lines, the NRC has the reputation of looking out for the interests of the nuclear industry. Reading about your current proposal confirms to me that your goal is to ensure the future of nuclear energy, an industry that should have no future. I see no hint that you have any intention of trying to protect the public, now or in the future. What makes me think that you're protecting the nuclear industry? Your claim that spent fuel can be managed at reactor sites or other above-ground storage facilities forever. Your failure to address the vulnerability of these spent fuel pools to catastrophic fire caused by an attack. Your declaration that the impacts of pool leaks will be insignificant. Your plan to transfer radioactive spent fuel to new storage casks every 100 years forever. These and many other absurdities are based on the assumption that government institutions will function safely for hundreds of years, an assertion that is inconsistent with human history, as others have said already tonight, and inconsistent with the NRC's own regulations. Your policy is also inconsistent with the mandate of the NWPA that above-ground storage is acceptable only on an interim basis. So I'm asking you, members of the NRC, to behave as though you actually are acting on behalf of public safety and stop protecting corporations that are profiting from nuclear energy. I'm asking you to behave as though we still have a government that serves people, not corporations. You still have some power to make that a reality in perhaps the most dangerous industry there is. Thank you.
I'm Ken Neidel. I read your report and I admire the effort you put forth to look at everything from tornadoes to terrorism, but I got hung up on time. And being an ex-teacher, I produced a visual aid here to explain what I'm concerned about. What I have here is some fishing line, and I took the first 6 inches here and I measured off a time equivalent to the first 2,000 years from 0 AD up here to the present. So, if you let 2,000 years be 6 inches, it becomes a math problem just to fix other points along the line. The part I marked off in black here, which you probably can barely see, is the Industrial Revolution, roughly about from 1850 up to the present. And there's a little red band here at the end that you might not be able to see. That's out to the year 2100 at the end of the century. When I'm thinking about time, that's the time I'm mainly thinking about. What's going to happen just by the end of this century. And scientists predict not a lot of good things. In addition to climate change, we may lose a quarter to half the world's species. We're going to lose our fisheries. Our water tables are threatened. Add another half an inch if you want to extend time a little bit. We're going to run out of oil. We're going to run out of coal. And we're going to run out of natural gas. The point is, scientists right now have not a very clear idea of what the world's going to look like in just 100 years. And you're saying you know what the world's going to look like 250,000 years from now, a place where we can store radioactive waste safely. To me, that's just ludicrous. To help you get a handle on the length of time that we're talking about here now, Sally's going to pull out this fishing line. And it doesn't take long until she gets just to 6 feet. And there it is, 6 feet. That represents the half-life of plutonium-239. That's out 24,000 years on this scale. Don't be too excited about that being a short distance, because one half-life isn't what we need to worry about. We need to worry about several half-lives when we're storing these wastes. Now she's going out, and you're going to have to move pretty quickly here. She's going out to technetium-99, which has a half-life of 210,000 years. She's going to go out 53 feet. And she's not quite there yet. Goes Sally. If she were to continue to do tin 126, she'd go out 58 feet. Selenium 79, 82 feet. Zirconium 93, 375 feet. Neptunium 237, 500 feet. Cesium 135, 575 feet. Palladium 107, 1,625 feet. And iodine 129, 3,925 feet. That's 3/4 of a mile. And you're telling me we can store these? Yeah, right. Well, we'll lose more than that. How can you believe we can store waste that long with the technology we have today? That's just absolutely ridiculous. There'll be several ice ages during the length of this time. Over 500 million species have evolved and gone extinct on Earth, and none have left a burden like this for the species that followed. I beg you to put aside the profit that can be made from building more nuclear facilities and think more carefully of the real risk involved in the legacy that we'll leave behind. This plan definitely makes sense when I read that Duke Energy, for example, is guaranteed a profit greater than 10% on all its construction projects. We should be directing our money, resources, and research towards developing sun, wind, and geothermal technology. One more sentence. They're clean, they'll never run out, and they won't leave a shameful legacy for our descendants.
Good evening. I'm Amanda Lang, and I'm a recent graduate of University of Wisconsin-Madison with a nuclear engineering degree, and I am currently a nuclear core designer for Duke Energy and a member of NAYGN, but the views expressed here are my personal opinion. As someone who is concerned about the environment, I am a strong supporter of nuclear energy. In fact, this is the reason I became a nuclear engineer. Nuclear energy is safe, it's reliable, and it does not emit greenhouse gases during operation. An advantage of nuclear energy over other sources of electricity generation is the concentrated manner of its waste. Nuclear waste is a solid, and it's very compact, unlike gases, ash, particulate matter, or toxic chemicals from solar panel production. This waste, or used fuel, accumulated over 50 years of nuclear operation in the U.S., can fit in the area of one football field filled to a height of 20 feet. I feel much more confident handling this waste than I would other types. In addition to being compact, another advantage of nuclear waste is the fact that it's not really waste. We can use our spent fuel to generate more energy and in the process reduce the amount of waste, as in the volume, and also the longevity of that waste. Right now, however, we are considering whether or not we feel confident that nuclear waste can be handled at our reactor sites. The answer is yes. It has been done for decades, and we have the technical expertise to handle our used nuclear fuel. The NRC has considered a variety of topics, everything from land use to socioeconomics to environmental justice to the effect on various species to cultural resource impacts. And their conclusion was, storing of used nuclear fuel has a low environmental impact. Whether in pools or dry casks, with proper maintenance and monitoring, there is no reason that used nuclear fuel could not be stored on site indefinitely. In the nuclear industry, the safety and health of the public and the environment
are first and foremost in the minds of employees like myself, and I take that very seriously. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Amanda.
I would like to thank the panel and those in attendance for their time and the opportunity to address this public meeting. I'm Adam Howell, a design engineer for REVA and the chair of my local chapter of North American Young Generation in Nuclear, or NAYGen. Represent just one chapter of 110 encompassing 10,000 young professionals across U.S., Canada, and Mexico. My background is in nuclear engineering with specialization in energy engineering at Texas A&M. My studies took this route because of the promise of energy security for our country, the sustainability of the energy source, and the difference I could make in protecting the environment. I support a diverse national energy portfolio, but believe we should use the resources where it makes sense. With respect to energy density, land usage, and air emissions, nuclear power is our best option for baseload power generation. I'm currently working within the industry and wouldn't have continued down my career path in the past 5 years if I thought this was contributing to something that was inherently unsafe and dangerous. I've worked at several plants that were run very well. I've seen plant maintenance outages as well as the day-to-day operations. I've even talked to the NRC inspectors who were very thorough in auditing the operators. Worked on several projects throughout my career. I've shown the industry has continued to progress. One project recently analyzed used fuel canisters and their storage systems. The casts were much larger than I expected seeing them firsthand, on the order of 100 tons of reinforced concrete and steel. These clearly provide the shielding needed to protect the public, as well as providing protection of the used nuclear fuel from hazards posed by not only Mother Nature, but terrorists. In addition, seeing the studies that attempted to breach the cast with everything from rocket sleds to military ordnance, my appreciation of the engineering has only increased. Another project focused on fuel storage and repackaging, both short and long term, in pools, casts, and storage facilities. We have the technology available to move, store, dispose, or even recycle the used nuclear fuel. The dry transfer systems operating in France and around the world are quite impressive. Overall, my generation is frustrated with the lack of political will to move forward with the technically sound and common sense options for nuclear energy production and used fuel management. We want those who are experts to be making rational, not emotional, decisions for our future. I support this conclusion that the fuel can be stored without significant environmental impact and laud the effort of the Commission to complete their analysis to address waste confidence issues. Sustainable and diverse energy solutions for storage and long-term energy planning for nuclear science and technology are vital, and I know the young professionals from NAYGen are ready to make progress and innovate throughout their careers to make this a reality. We were once leaders of nuclear science. I would like my generation to reclaim that title through thoughtful, risk-informed, performance-based rulemaking, not rulemaking based on irrationality, misunderstanding, and political grandstanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam. And then we're going to go to George Gunn, Carol Hams, and Kenneth Ash. This is the land.
Hello, I'm Elaine Cooper with the South Carolina Sierra Club from Columbia, South Carolina. I'm here tonight because I would like to represent many of the hardworking ratepayers in South Carolina who could not make the long drive to Charlotte, North Carolina. Recently, I was over doing my civic duty, voting absentee since I am working the polls tomorrow, and lo and behold, on the television news on the TV overhead in the room over at the Election Commission meeting, the TV reporter reported tritium leaks over at the nearby Catawba plant, not far from Charlotte. Fact, not motion. For the first time, I heard several voters, black, white, all walks of life, expressing their unanimous concern over tritium leaking from the Catawba plant. Are nuclear power plants safe? No. That's a big no. The Savannah Riverside Citizens Advisory vote voted no to interim storage at SRS. The SRS Citizens Advisory Board reflected the overwhelming concern that once waste was allowed to be stored at SRS, that perhaps SRS would be considered a permanent depository. This decision shocked me. I've never heard this coming from that area, coming from an area where folks depend on SRS, depend on the nuclear industry for their jobs. This spoke volumes, reflecting the public's concern over nuclear waste piling up on site and its lack of a permanent storage. Basically, I have not experienced such an overwhelming concern about the lack of a permanent disposal of radioactive waste ever compared to the many years that I've been going to these meetings from South Carolina ratepayers. Closer to home, VC Summer has waste that is in an overcrowded and spent fuels. Residents who live around VC Summer expressed their extreme concern over the risk to the public from these overcrowded spent fuel pools to me, saying that as I manned the booth over at the State Fair, and I think many of the residents heard this over a period of 2 weeks, over and over, that residents were concerned about spent fuel being piled up in overcrowded spent fuels pools. These above ground spent pools are not guarded well, and many South Carolina residents are gravely concerned about attacks from terrorists, like a bomb, a plane, or anything that could easily set these above ground pools on fire. In closing, folks from all walks of life, race and age, without hesitation signed our petition at the South Carolina Sierra Club booth at the State Fair, all extremely concerned about nuclear spent fuel piling up on site above ground in spent nuclear pools with no permanent storage. No, South Carolina does not have confidence in waste, the production of it, the piling up of it in nuclear spent fuels, and the lack of permanent storage. Thanks.
Thank you. George Gunn, and then we go to Tara Hands and then Kenneth Beck.
Good evening. I'm George Gunn. I'm licensing supervisor for Plant Vogtle Units 1 and 2. I've been in nuclear power for almost 30 years and have had a wide array of exposure everywhere from operations to training, quality assurance, and now most recently into licensing. Nuclear energy plays a vital role in meeting our nation's electricity needs, protecting the environment and preserving the fuel and technology diversity that is the strength of the U.S. electricity system. 100 nuclear power plants generate nearly 20% of our electricity, and in 7 states, nuclear plants generate more electricity than any other source. The Energy Department projects that the U.S. electricity demand will rise 28% by the year 2040, even with very modest economic growth. That means the United States will need hundreds of new power plants of all types to meet increased demand and replace older facilities that are retired. To help close that gap, we're in the process of constructing 2 new units right now and have them scheduled to go online in 2017 and 2018. Some of these new power plants will have to be nuclear, like the 2 new units under construction now at Georgia at Vogtle, or the other 3 that are also under construction in South Carolina and Tennessee. Nuclear energy is the only emission-free source of electricity that can be widely expanded. The President has set ambitious goals for reducing carbon dioxide emissions, and the United States simply cannot get there without nuclear energy in the mix. In addition to generating clean air electricity, nuclear plants strengthen state and local economies through jobs, taxes, and direct and secondary spending. A typical nuclear reactor generates $470 million a year in economic output, including more than $35 million in total labor income. These figures include both direct output and secondary effects. The secondary effects at the local level include subsequent spending attributable to the presence of the plant and its employees, and planned expenditures filter through the local economy. The spending amounts to approximately $17 million a year. Analysis shows that every dollar spent by the average nuclear plant results in the creation of $1.04 in the local community, $1.18 in the state economy, and $1.87 in the U.S. economy. The average nuclear plant pays about $16 million in state and local taxes annually. These tax dollars benefit schools, roads, and other state and local infrastructure. As a lifelong resident, I was born and raised in the area of Plant Vogel, and for many reasons, nuclear energy has to be a vital part of our nation's energy plan. We urge the Commission to complete the waste confidence rulemaking and move forward with licensing of renewed operating licensings for existing plants and new units to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, George.
Hello, I'm Tara Hans from Georgia. It took me 6 hours to get up here, and I assume others came from farther away. I'm personally disappointed that not one out of the 5 commissioners could be here to see the faces of some humanity here, to get a feeling of what's going on emotionally with people. I would suggest that that happen at the future activities. I'm wondering if some of you have heard that Plant Vogel, as mentioned on the radio last week, had 75 violations. Raise your hand if you knew that. Another thing I'm wondering if you know, that the butterfly genes have been mutated in Fukushima by radiation. How many know that the butterflies are now deformed? Have you heard that? Okay, another thing to raise your hand on. September 12th of last year, the reactor 4 in Fukushima has sunk 31 inches in the ground. How many have heard that? Thank you. I personally feel that the media and NRC and energy plants are keeping the public in the dark. We hardly hear anything about it. You have to do all the research on your own. The ocean is being contaminated with radiation, and the air is coming through here and also the currents. So the fish you eat from California and Oregon and all over from Japan is going to be contaminated too. So no matter what you think, what you eat might make a difference in your life. I brought this cup because today I was in the hospitality room, and they had wonderful food there, but they had no place to put the waste. Just like the nuclear waste here. We have no place to put this. Nobody wants it. No state really wants it, unless you're getting paid a lot of money, and then some people who have the power to make decisions will go for that. I'm just urging you to listen carefully to everything people say and do what's right when you make your decision for that. And I have one final thing. As a famous person in Russia took their shoe and pounded and said, please, do what's right.
And we're going to go to Kenneth Ash right now, and then we're going to go to Timothy Rogers and Jay Wellwood.
Good evening. This opportunity to speak to the crowd here and the NRC. My name's Kenneth Ash, and I'm here to speak for my children, my grandchildren, and future generations on into however long nuclear radioactive waste might be around for us for the next 20,000 years, 200,000 years, I don't know. It's a problem, isn't it? There's so many things I'd like to say. One thing I want to get out right now is that I think the big push for why nuclear power industry keeps gripping, keeps pushing on and on, it's a centralized way of producing producing electricity. It is easily controlled, dominated by a small group of people. To decentralize the electric grid through solar and wind power would be to give power to the common man, to democratize our electrical system. And that's the last thing that the ruling oligarchy wants, is to democratize the system. Okay, I'll get back onto the waste issue. Okay, this white paper, or the generic environmental impact statement, I've got a feeling, I've noticed that when somebody's speaking the truth and they really want to make things clear for you, they can say what they need to say in just a few sentences, maybe a few paragraphs. When people have to go on and on for pages and pages and use a bunch of big words and do a bunch of verbal mumbly-jumbly, it's obfuscation, people. They're trying to fool you. They're trying to make a joke out of what they're saying. They want you to, they want your eyes to glaze over and for you to throw it to the side and says, hell, I can't understand this. Well, you know what? I don't care what they say. There's a few facts that we can all see real clearly. Our society started generating nuclear waste back about in the early 1940s. Let's put 1945 on it as a date. That's when we dropped atomic bombs on Japan. And we were generating nuclear waste at that time. So we've known for almost 70 years now that we've got a problem with what are we going to do with all this waste material, all this radioactive crap that we keep generating. In that 70 years, we are no closer to a solution. These papers that these people come out with saying, well, we've got a solution on the way, trust us. Yeah, trust me. We got a solution. Within 60 years, they say, we will have a permanent repository for these 200,000-year waste products. I don't believe it. You've had 70 years to come up with it so far, and you ain't anywhere near a solution. What makes me believe that you're going to have a solution in the next 60 years? I don't believe it. I don't trust you. And when you come up with a real solution that the American people can believe in, then we might consider letting you create some more dangerous nuclear materials. But until then, stop the madness. Let's not have any more of this junk. One thing we do with it, since we don't have anywhere else to put it, we put it into bullets and bombs and we drop it on Kosovo, Iraq, Afghanistan. And those people don't want our nuclear waste. Okay. We need to deal with it ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. Timothy Rogers. Timothy. And next we'll go to Dave Wellwood, and then we're going to go to Shine Moffett.
Hello, my name is Tim Rogers. I work for Duke Energy. I'm a member of the North American Young Generation of Nuclear. But these comments I'm providing are my own personal opinion. I'm just representing myself tonight as a member of the Charlotte community. I would like to thank the NRC for providing this time to provide public comments on the waste confidence ruling. I would like to state that I fully agree with and support the conclusions that are proposed in the environmental statement impacts. And I fully believe, with all of the technical understanding that I have of the nuclear industry, that the environmental impacts stated in that ruling are very clear, concise, and we have a very sound understanding of what is going to occur. The nuclear energy plays a crucial role in our nation's diversified energy portfolio, serves as a safe, reliable, clean air, baseload energy source. Solar power and wind power are different parts of that diversified portfolio, and we fully believe in using those energy sources at Duke Energy. But nuclear has to be a part of that portfolio as well. Nuclear energy makes up nearly 32% of the energy in North Carolina and helps bring stable power prices and availability to all of the residents here. The Energy Department projects that U.S. electricity demand will rise roughly 28% by 2040, and the U.S. will need hundreds of new power plants to meet that increased demand over that time frame. Energy demand has grown roughly 2.4% per year over the past 5 years in North Carolina. And in order to meet this energy demand and reduce carbon dioxide emissions at the same time, nuclear energy will need to continue to be a major part of the electricity portfolio. The United States was the first country to develop nuclear power, and we have the largest nuclear program in the world. U.S. reactors have demonstrated over a long period of time their ability to maintain safe operation over their long lifetimes. Stringent federal regulations from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and an industry culture that has been built on principles for strong safety culture and the NRC's robust independent oversight ensure that the nuclear industry reflects a safety-first position in every decision that we make, including the safe management of used nuclear fuel. In addition, the NRC holds nuclear power plants to the highest security standards of any American industry to date. Due to nuclear energy's crucial role in our nation's diversified portfolio, it is essential that the NRC complete the waste confidence rulemaking and resume issuing new operating licenses and license renewals for nuclear plants. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jay Well, and I'm the program manager for dry cask storage projects at the Westinghouse Electric Company. First thing I'd like to mention to you all is, you just can't trust atoms because they make up everything, right? I'm a member of the American Nuclear Society, serving as a vice chair of the Fuel Cycle Waste Management Division as well. First, I'd like to extend my personal thanks to the NRC representatives for hosting this meeting. I would also like to compliment you and the staff on the quality of the documents that you've prepared. Documents are very well written and laid out in very sound, logical fashion. My career in nuclear started in the United States Navy, where I served for 6 years, 3 years aboard a nuclear-powered submarine stationed in Charleston, South Carolina. When I exited the Navy, I entered the nuclear power industry. First step was in operations, where I earned my reactor operator's license at a commercial plant. And then I transitioned over to supporting dry cask storage operations in 1994. I loaded fuel into my first dry fuel storage canister in 1996. I've been involved with virtually every aspect of dry cask storage process at reactor sites to date, from performing nearly every physical task associated with the placement and sealing of used fuel into canisters, to performing engineering and licensing technical evaluations that document the impact of implementation of dry cask storage systems at numerous reactor sites around the country. I am intimately familiar with a majority of all dry cask storage systems licensed for use in the United States by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. As you well know, dry cask storage containers have been deployed successfully across these United States since 1986. At both active and decommissioned reactor sites. These containers have been qualified by analytical methods and proven by rigorous testing to be able to successfully withstand any accident scenario, whether it be natural or a man-made event. Based off my experience, it is my professional opinion that there is substantial evidence to support the conclusions in the report regarding at and away from reactor storage, as well as the conclusions regarding cumulative impacts of those scenarios when combined with other federal and non-federal actions. There are no technical barriers to achieving this result, nor are there any financial barriers given the current and growing balance of the Nuclear Waste Fund, which contains over $26 billion to date and continues to grow. The analysis contained in the Waste Confidence draft generic environmental impact statement support what the Commission and those of us in the industry have long known. If necessary, used fuel can continue to be stored in a safe, environmentally sound manner for a very long period of time while we wait for the political process to reach consensus on a final disposal solution. For nearly 56 years now, American homes, businesses, and government operations have been benefited from electricity generated using nuclear technology safely. In closing, it is my professional opinion that there are simply no indications that even a minimal decrease in safety margin or a challenge to the environment will be experienced by the continued practice of storage of used fuel in dry fuel storage canisters at or away from reactor sites for 60, 160, or even indefinitely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sheila Maffett. Okay. This is Sheila Maffett.
Thank you. I am really honored to be able to speak with you. My name is Sheila Maffett.
Can you? Yeah, there you go.
My name is Sheila Maffett. I am a green granny. That's environmentalist, and I'm a longtime member of Sierra Club, and I belong to 350.org. So you can see that I am extremely concerned about our environment. And it concerns me a great deal that we are creating waste that lasts for, I don't know, thousands of years. I'm not technical, but it is very, I mean, you know, suppose we could store it safely for 160 years. Well, you know, I won't be around, but my grandchildren will be, and my great-grandchildren will be, and I'm concerned about them. And I know that nothing remains the same. I hear all this technical stuff. Well, you know, it's been good for 50 years, it's been good for 60 years, but it's not going to be good forever. We know that. We know it through history. We know it from Fukushima. We know, I mean, great grannies in Fukushima are giving up their life in Japan, are giving up their life to clean up the mess there. I don't want to do it here, and I don't want my grandchildren to do it either. So, I see, you know, I hear things that sound sort of reasonable, you know, if you don't think that things are ever going to change. But I know they do. I've lived long enough to see that things do not stay the same, and we don't have the control. And with our environment, our getting worse day by day, we have no idea what kind of weather we might have in South Carolina. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Our speakers are Charles Pennington, Monica Embry, Bessie Brevard, Louis Patre, and Terrence Parker. So is Charles?
Good evening. I'm Charlie Pennington, and I'm with NAC International. I have more than 3 decades of experience in used fuel system design, licensing, and operation. I've led development, I've led testing, I've led licensing. I would like to express appreciation to the NRC for having this public meeting tonight. I do greatly support NRC's efforts in the preparation of the GEIS, which will help advance waste confidence for our industry. But tonight I want to expand upon the robustness of dry used fuel systems, which is more than just a bit understated and in fact underdocumented in the GEIS, both for severe accidents and for potential acts of sabotage and terrorism. I will use some selected information presented to the Blue Ribbon Commission in 2010 and 2011. Dry used fuel systems are among the safest of all industrial technologies, as presented and discussed by the National Academy of Sciences in 2 publications. Extensive safety analyses and testing have been performed to conclude that used fuel systems in a licensed configuration will not release radioactive material under any credible accident conditions. Conservative materials for used package containment boundaries result in about 2 orders of magnitude more energy absorption capability before failure than is permitted for credit by our current design standards. And that is one reason why the largest conditional consequence doses reported in the GEIS, and in fact in the new Reg 1864 reference document, are incorrect. They greatly overstate what the actual results would be. With respect to potential acts of sabotage or terrorism, many analyses of highly improbable sabotage or accident occurrences have shown that such events are most unlikely to result in dry used fuel system containment boundary breaches because of their rugged designs. For terrorist-induced, beyond design basis events, only those involving high energy density devices or a specific type of military weapon have any real opportunity of compromising dry used fuel system integrity. The probability of system breach is still vanishingly small, since reasonable proximity to the package and time-consuming precise placement of such weapons must be achieved for perfect impact condition, which is commonly called zero obliquity. Substantial testing and analysis show that radioactive material released from such an attack would be extremely limited. Used fuel that might be released would be of such a small quantity, and it would be very localized to around the system. The fraction of the contents that would be released would be trivial. What this means is that any resulting exposures would be far below, and I say far below, the unregulated doses to the public received from dozens of non-nuclear industries year after year, decade after decade. Finally, I would encourage the NRC to provide more details in the GEIS that are similar to these that I have just laid out regarding package robustness, so that the public, in fact, can understand exactly what the NRC truly knows. This concludes my remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. And then next we're going to go to Betsy Rivard.
Good evening. My name is Monica Embry, and I'm the North Carolina lead organizer for Greenpeace. Greenpeace has a long and rich history of fighting nuclear energy. And I want to start by telling you about a story that happened to me 2.5 years ago. I was on Skype, actually, with my best friend who lives in Japan, in Fukuoka, and her name is Aki. And in the middle of our conversation, all of a sudden the computer screen started to shake, and she jumped up and screamed, "Earthquake." She then had to hide in the small door frame of her one-bedroom apartment. That was the day that the tides rose and the triple meltdown happened at Fukushima. Since then, I have heard heartbreaking stories of what the communities in Japan are going through. The sacrifices of the elders, knowing that they face certain death, but still go out to help with the cleanup efforts. The mothers who are begging for the lives of their children and crying out to the world, "Nidoto nai yo ni," which means, "Let it never happen again." We face those same threats here, where dozens of reactors in the United States are overly loaded fuel ponds are sitting 3 stories tall, and since they are outside of the containment, could contaminate entire states. Many of us in the room know that the NRC is a captured agency, and its inability to adequately regulate the nuclear industry and protect the public has never been more evident than it is today. But yet we are still hopeful this can change, and we will continue to fight. As was mentioned in the presentation today, the NRC is charged with protecting the public's health and safety. But the draft generic EIS fails people and our planet by not adequately addressing the real risks of nuclear waste once again. Today, hundreds of unpaid concerned citizens are here tonight to ask you to stop protecting the corporations like Duke Energy, headquartered here in Charlotte, and instead defend the people of the United States. Recently, Duke Energy CEO Lynn Good had expressed her intention to continue Duke's nuclear fleet. We do not have confidence in this ruling or in the ability of companies like Duke to manage their nuclear plants. See Crystal River in Florida. We know the real risks of nuclear energy and its waste, and that is why we are asking you to abandon this general ruling and instead draft individual EIS for each location. The only solution for nuclear waste is to stop producing it. We oppose this EIS and any new operating licenses for nuclear plants. Cleaner and cheaper energy is the future. This includes solar and wind. I'm glad to hear that Duke Energy is also investing them, but would love to see more than 3% in the Carolinas in the next 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you. And Texas required, and then Lewis Patry and Aaron Clark.
Hi, I'm Betsy Rivard. I'm here on behalf of Georgia WAND, Women's Action for New Directions, and also Nuclear Watch South. And I live in Atlanta. Drove up, spending almost 5 hours driving up here. And my father actually worked in Oak Ridge. I spent the first 5 years of my life in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And he was a metallurgist, but he actually recovered from the nuclear virus. And after he moved away, he looked at nuclear energy and all things nuclear in a totally different light, and he was concerned about nuclear waste, as am I. We need to move the spent or irradiated fuel rods from pools at reactor sites to hardened on-site storage. I am a supporter of hardened on-site storage. If there ever is to be one site where the fuel would be, it would have to go to dry cast anyway to be transported. So I say move it to dry cast as soon as possible. Let's see, spent fuel pools are targets for terrorists, and moving the waste to interim storage would create hundreds of new waste sites, the mobile waste sites, and plus the trucks and trains and boats, whatever, ships, and not to mention new targets. I'm sure the authorities in Japan also considered the potential negative impacts of storing nuclear waste in the pools on site to be small, just as this EIS does, but accidents happen. Because of Fukushima, we know the negative effects of storing spent fuel in pools on site. We need to stop making the waste and stop licensing and relicensing nuclear plants to make more waste. These spent fuel rods contain 1 million times more radiation than they did going into the reactor. We have 80,000 tons of the stuff. If we had continued to build Yucca Mountain, it would not be adequate at this time because we have more waste than Yucca Mountain would hold. Not all nuclear waste is the same. It's highly flammable. And got to kind of skip on some of the stuff I said here. There's still spent fuel stored in pools at nuclear plant sites where the reactors have been decommissioned, and we need to take care of that, those spent fuel rods right away. And I looked up the Catawba accident leak, and of course the response is that there's no problem, everything's safe, they've got it under control. But the very last sentence of this article from WBTV says, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency says drinking water that contains tritium can increase the risk of developing cancer. So anyway, just had to add that as the latest news. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lewis and Karen.
I'm Dr. Lewis Patry, Chair Emeritus of Western North Carolina Physicians for Social Responsibility. Would not the proposed transportation of radioactive waste establish consolidated interim storage sites for high-level radioactive waste, initiating transport of tens of thousands of casks of lethal radioactive waste on our roads and railways for the primary benefit of the nuclear power industry, while endangering the health and safety of millions of Americans? As long as nuclear reactors generate this waste, would not interim waste sites simply create more contaminated sites, while at the same time allow for the production of ever-increasing amounts of these dangerous materials for which future generations would have to contend? While the Department of Energy and energy corporations have stressed a long track record of decades of safe nuclear power, isn't there much evidence that such claims cannot be substantiated? Isn't there evidence that the entire nuclear energy cycle consistently emits low levels of radioactive nuclides, which results in human exposure to these materials? Have nuclear energy proponents ignored the evidence provided by many reputable scientists who believe, based on their research, that there is no threshold for radiation damage to humans, no dose which is harmless? And I cite Dr. Steve Wing's study and others. Such findings exist among many reports that even very low doses of radiation can indeed induce cellular damage that can result in increased incidences of cancer and genetic defects. Risks from incidents involving increased transportation of these very highly dangerous nuclear materials could expose populations to unacceptable dangers. Do not precautionary principles call for rapidly phasing out of nuclear power? Our nation should be accelerating maximum development of ending wasteful energy practices, improving energy efficiency, and putting resources planned for the very excessive and escalating costs of nuclear power into truly renewable energy resources, especially solar, wind, and geothermal. Ending the generation of radioactive waste would be the most effective single step toward addressing our radioactive waste dilemma. Instead of a so-called temporary proposal of transporting high quantities of these materials, our experts should adopt a safer plan of stopping them and storing them in high, dry, hardened, secure on-site facilities until a permanent, scientifically defensible, and publicly acceptable waste solution is developed. As we consider the environmental impact statement proposed, remember there is nothing as likely to become permanent as a temporary solution. Are we not all downwinders with unknown man-made radionuclides in our bodies? Do we have the human intellect to find a way to determine how much of these nuclides are in our bodies at the present time?
Can I ask you to finish up, Dr. Patrick?
Yeah, I'm just about done. Has the human intellect the capacity to discern if there is a human burden which will ultimately threaten human existence? I think not. Precautionary principles direct us to stop making radioactive waste.
Thank you. And this is Karen Clark.
Hello, my name is Terry Clark. I'm a physician, a psychiatrist, and I'm currently the chairperson in Western North Carolina for the group that Dr. Patry and I belong to, Physicians for Social Responsibility. Our group goes back in history to the 60s and 70s, and in the 70s and 80s we were very focused on nuclear weapons and how there could be such catastrophe with the detonation of nuclear weapons, the humanitarian destruction that could occur. Now we've come to recognize the close tie between nuclear weapons and commercial nuclear power. As was mentioned a number of times, it can be reprocessed, but one of the products of reprocessing can be plutonium. Thus, that's why we're so concerned about Iran and other countries having commercial power capabilities. I think the EIS needs a great deal of reworking. I think certain basic tenets need to perfuse and underlie everything in that study. One of them is that ionizing radiation can cause cancers. We know that from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we know that from Chernobyl, and we know that from Japan. But there is whitewashing going on. There are studies coming out from the UN, and when you go to the NRC, you see that what they say in their website is that we're pleased that no ill effects of radiation have occurred. They do add more time as needed. There is evidence already of thyroid cancers in children, and there's continued. The Japanese tragedy is not over yet. They're still actively being exposed to radiation. I want to get at one of the most important issues, and that is the structural problems with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The revolving door. I went to the section on ethics in the NRC website, and it looked thorough, and I was pleased to see they gave some examples of how someone, if they're a professor, can go give a lecture and not get extra money. What I didn't find was the example of how someone can make a favorable ruling regarding a corporation and then have a job with them in 3 months. That's not addressed in the ethics. I don't know. The Japan Parliament commissioned an independent study. And what they got back was the number one concern was the structural problems in Japan of the close tie to industry and the regulators, and they placed major blame on that. Thus, that is a recommendation that affects the environment, affects all of this. We've heard this stuff, last for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and we don't have plans. We have to stop making this poison.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, our next speakers are Ashley Wesley, Avram Friedman, Ole Sorensen, Rod McCollum, and Andrew Coe. Ashley?
Good evening. My name is Ashley Wesley. I work as a lead engineer for the dry cast storage project at Vogtle Nuclear Plant, operated by Southern Nuclear, a subsidiary of Southern Company. Thank you for the opportunity to make a statement today at this meeting. Southern Nuclear strongly believes that nuclear energy is an integral part of a national energy plan and must continue to generate an essential share of the nation's clean, non-emitting, zero-carbon baseload electricity. Nuclear energy generates 17% of the carbon-free electricity produced by Southern Company, and that will increase with the completion of the construction of the 2 new units at Vogtle currently underway. Southern Nuclear's top priority is the safety and health of the public and our employees. We are committed to the safe operation of our nuclear generating facilities with equipment and systems that meet strict NRC safety and design regulations. To that end, we urge the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to continue its strong independent oversight of commercial nuclear energy facilities, the operation of existing plants, licensing new reactors, renewing the operating licenses of existing reactors, and the management, transportation, and disposal of used nuclear fuel. Used nuclear fuel is equally safe in pools or in dry storage located at nuclear energy facilities, and we use both at Vogtle. The NRC has reiterated the safety and security of used nuclear fuel management in post-Fukushima. Used nuclear fuel is well protected from potential natural events and terrorist attacks by a combination of sturdy design and construction, multiple safety systems, ongoing surveillance and inspection, and state-of-the-art security measures. Used fuel pools are large, robust structures with reinforced concrete walls, several feet thick, and steel liners. Water offers superb shielding for radiation, and every fuel pool offers 25 to 30 feet of water for shielding and fuel cooling. The volume of water in the pools is so large that any evaporative process associated with a loss of cooling system would provide ample time for operators to establish backup water supply. All used fuel pools are designed to seismic standards consistent with other important safety-related structures on plant sites. Augmenting already redundant safety systems to ensure cooling of fuel assemblies in pools, the industry has added backup cooling water spray systems and placed portable water supply equipment at locations near the pool so that it can be available quickly in the event of an emergency. As part of their post-Fukushima safety enhancements, our facilities are also adding instrumentation with improved capabilities to monitor levels in used fuel pools in the face of extreme events such as Fukushima. Dry storage containers are robust concrete and steel structures with no moving parts. Multiple barriers provide defense in depth protection. More than 100 tons of concrete and steel forms a precisely engineered structure to provide or to protect every 10 tons of used fuel. Over the past 30 years, the nuclear industry has safely loaded more than 1,700 dry storage systems. All these systems are in service today, and there has been zero release of their radioactive contents. To gain license renewal, facilities must put in place stringent aging management programs to ensure that containers are adequately maintained and inspected. Vogtle has done that and will continue to do so each and every our license is up for renewal.
Can I ask you to finish up?
Sure. We believe it is important for the NRC to continue its transparent and efficient efforts and to maintain its 24-month schedule for the current waste confidence proceedings so that progress on both plant licensing and used fuel management can continue. I would like to thank the NRC for hosting this public meeting and providing an opportunity for comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Avram Friedman. I'm the Executive Director of the Canary Coalition, a grassroots environmental organization in Western North Carolina with 2,300 members. Let me begin by stating that it's hard for me to believe that there's any confidence in the prospect that there is or ever will be an adequate solution to the permanent storage of high-level nuclear waste. I don't see how there can ever be public confidence, judicial confidence, regulatory confidence, industrial confidence, scientific confidence. I don't see how any thoughtful, sane, intelligent person within this room or outside this room doesn't know intuitively that it's impossible to guarantee the monitoring and containment of anything for hundreds of thousands of years, much less corrosive, hot, and deadly spent nuclear fuel rods containing plutonium-239. Plutonium-239, with a half-life of 24,110 years, and among the deadliest, most carcinogenic substances known to humankind. As I'm sure you've heard repeatedly, the pyramids in Giza are only about 5,000 years old, and we struggle to try to interpret the hieroglyphics written on stones that have survived the ages. Even if we could somehow supernaturally contain this waste in leak-proof containers forever, what language will we use to print warning signs to future civilizations that may unwittingly uncover our spent nuclear fuels 10,000, 50,000 years, or 100,000 years from now? Do we just shrug our collective shoulders and exclaim, "Who cares what happens that far in the future?" Well, for the record, I care. I care about my children. children, my grandchildren, and the welfare of all future generations, and I consider it my responsibility not to willingly do them harm through my actions today, especially through a totally unnecessary activity such as boiling water through the use of nuclear chain reaction to create steam that runs a 19th century technology turbine in an inefficient, dirty, and environmentally irresponsible and obsolete method of generating electricity. We don't have to do this because we can dramatically reduce energy consumption through public policies that drive conservation and energy efficiency, as well as the deployment of clean, safe, and renewable technologies that harvest the sunlight, the wind, geothermal heat, the ocean waves, and tides. For more than 25 years, I was a plumbing contractor. On occasion, I'd be called by a frantic person who had a flooded basement because a water main had broken. Water was everywhere, knee-deep or higher, damaging the structure of the building, ruining the contents, undermining the foundation. When that happens, I can tell you with expert certainty that the first thing you do to address the problem is to shut off the water supply. Then you begin to deal with the water that has already accumulated. If you don't shut off the water first, all subsequent efforts at solving the problem are more or less futile. Any sane, thoughtful, and intelligent person understands this. There's no difference in the logic of dealing with our current conundrum on high-level nuclear waste. The first thing we have to do is stop making more nuclear waste. Thank
you. Well, guess what I think? Well, there was one of these days in a random act of hope, this little ditty came to me. It was a dark and stormy night of the nuclear powers when the people fought the radiation showers. And in spite of its friendly atom, it had made absolutely no peace on the planet, and hardly anyone could muster flower powers. But then the NRC came finally and had a great vision, and gathered their courage with much greater mission. They swallowed their pride. They took it in great stride and declared that now is the end of nuclear fission. Now, I'm back here today to raise my voice to be heard and to speak against mankind's greatest folly. I'm again showing up like a bad penny, but with all the sense that Liz Penny can muster. Making sense of nuclear power is something that I have never been able to do. No matter what I read, how I turn it, I always end up shaking my head and wonder, how did we come up with such a pea-brained idea? We have had more than 50 years of wasted confidence, and it's time for a real solution. This GEIS is the generic, environmentally ignorant sing-song that does indeed require a good spanking and ought to be filed where the sun don't shine and never be heard of again. We deserve better than this. This public meeting is supposed to be an important part of the democratic system where the many voices can be heard and, much more importantly, be respected. I promise you, the NRC, that the time has come when you will begin to feel the ire of us who has common sense and who realize how stupid this whole nuclear circus always has been. I have absolutely no confidence in any solution to dealing with any more nuclear waste than to stop making the darn stuff. And don't even consider some desperate idea that the waste can be used as fuel in a new generation of death. Give me a break. At this point, you still have a small chance to redeem yourself and maybe get a decent review in the future history books. Otherwise, I can promise you that the next 6,000 generations will look back at your misguided activities with much disdain, anger, and disbelief. So, to close, stop being an embarrassment to the human race and show us the courage that will make us all smile and let out a big sigh of relief. It's time to get out of the diapers and grow into responsible human beings. Putting a stop to the nuclear power generation will definitely show real leadership and true concern for the quality of life in the generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't you go, Andrew, and then we'll go to Bob. Go ahead.
I apologize. You're closer.
So we're going to go Andrew, Rod, and then Frank Barilla.
Representatives of the NRC staff, fellow environmentalists, ladies and gentlemen, we can all be confident that used nuclear fuel is being safely stored, can be safely stored, and will be safely stored. My name is Andrew Cook. I'm a father, I'm an environmentalist, I'm a physicist, and I'm also an engineer. I'm a father of 3 children. I worked for the Appalachian Mountain Club. I was on my township environmental advisory board. I earned my PhD from MIT, where I also did work in physics with Sam Ting on the experiment for which he won the Nobel Prize. I earned 2 engineering degrees beyond that at MIT. My father actually designed some of the very first nuclear fuel that mankind ever has made and ever has used. I am confident, and you can be confident, that nuclear fuel is, can be, and will be safely stored. It is safely stored because the used fuel that is stored at the sites was designed by many of my friends, some who are here today, using the stringent standards required by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I have also been to those sites and seen how the operators of those plants have so carefully managed that fuel and continue to prudently manage it. And I have observed the nuclear regulatory on-site inspectors who rigorously require that the operators maintain adherence to the nuclear regulatory requirements. I say it can be safely stored for the following reason. It is being safely stored under U.S. license by the United States Department of Energy at the Waste Isolation Pilot Project in New Mexico. 2,000 feet underground, actinides are being stored in a salt dome right now as licensed by the United States government. I say it can be safely stored because my company, Areva, will today take any nuclear fuel from any nuclear power plant in the United States, put it with the thousands of fuel assemblies we have at our La Hague reprocessing facility, and even recycle it today, extract the plutonium, and just like we burn plutonium from Russian nuclear weapons in U.S. nuclear reactors to take that plutonium off the street as a weapon and instead peacefully produce electricity, we can do the same today with U.S. nuclear fuel at our recycling facility and take the small amount of extra material and melt it into glass logs this size to keep it protected from the environment. But I say again, it can be safely stored because for those who ask about the long timelines, in one of our mines in Oclo Gabon, we discovered there were no less than 16 nuclear reactors, nuclear fission reactors which ran 1.7 billion years ago, long before human beings existed. I encourage you to look it up. And how do we know that they were there? Because by the grace of God, that nuclear fuel was safely stored. And what happened? When the water got on it, it precipitated into the water and then moved as much as a foot and then precipitated out of solution as crystals. And we found those crystals, so we know the fuel can be stored for 1.7 billion years. It, in fact, has actually happened. So also, I will say it will be safely stored for the following reason. If you make a dry storage facility underground, water would have to come down through thousands of feet of rock where it's never been, penetrate through stainless steel, come through zirconium, and then try to dissolve a ceramic like this cup. A ceramic like this cup, water doesn't dissolve it. Have to finish up? Okay, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a concerned father. I'm concerned about my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren. I'm concerned about the environmental impact of the many other energy sources that you and I are breathing the waste of, the gasoline you use to drive here today. We can all be confident that used nuclear fuel is being safely stored, can be safely stored, and will be safely stored. I ask the NRC commissioners to pass the new safe storage rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Hi, my name is Rod McCullum. I work for the Nuclear Energy Institute, the trade association that represents the industry. So many of the companies are represented here today. And I just want to say how proud I am to, for the last 15 years, have been able to serve as the representative of these skilled, dedicated, hardworking professionals, so many of whom have shown up tonight to show their support for this rulemaking. Of course, the Nuclear Energy Institute will also show its support. We will comment specifically. But those of you who do this work, those of you who I have seen safely manage the pools over a 50-year period, safely load over 1,700 dry casks, develop technological innovations in both the pools and the casks to assure safety, you are my inspiration. One of the things that's kept me going in this sometimes frustrating end of the business for the last 15 years is that it is a business where people don't get into the business unless they really believe in what they're doing. And they don't stay in the business unless they're really good at what they're doing. Charlotte, you are so very lucky to be a hub of this industry, to have so many of these companies located here, all of the jobs. They are doing good work for America. I'm proud to say that for my entire life, millions of people have been getting the benefits of safe, clean, and reliable electricity from nuclear energy. The people I'm speaking out for today, the people who I work for, they don't just enrich America with the efforts they do, they have enriched your communities. They are an important part of the fabric of this part of the country. I'm jealous. I live in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm surrounded by a bunch of politicians. I think we have a lot of differing opinions with a lot of common grounds about what the politicians have done with this issue. Waste confidence is just one small piece of the regulatory puzzle that nuclear professionals must deal with every day. And these are professionals that don't just meet regulations, they exceed regulations. The court was very specific. The findings were very narrow. NRC has addressed these. A lot of talk about the generic nature and whether that's appropriate. NRC has done it appropriately because they've been bounding. There are a lot of enveloping assumptions in here. Impacts are shown to be small, but in reality they'll be even smaller. We won't be repackaging every 100 years. We won't be building dry transfer facilities at every site. We won't be waiting 60 years to move fuel out of pools that shut down plants. The average since dry cask storage was invented was 11 years. So in closing, there's a lot to be confident. There will be more innovation. And Charlotte, you have a lot to be proud of, and thank you.
My name is Frank Brill, and I'm a manager at Arriva. I'm also a licensed professional engineer in the state of North Carolina, and I grew up in South Florida, 15 miles from the St. Lucie nuclear power plant. I've been working as a mechanical engineer for 24 years. The first 5 years were in the aerospace industry, and I've been involved with nuclear power for the balance 19 years. I'm surprised that as a society, we voiced all these concerns about nuclear energy, but we're very comfortable with commercial airlines. Both of these industries provide benefits to society by implementing complex and intricate technologies. Both of these industries are filled with dedicated professionals who have spent their life's work trying to understand how to harness the technology and make it safe for the public. Let me say that again. Both of these industries are filled with dedicated professionals who have spent their life's work understanding how to harness the technology and make it safe for the public. Both of these industries have independent regulatory structures to ensure the public's safety. Tonight's meeting is an example of the nuclear regulatory process in action. In addition to the NRC, the nuclear industry also has established the Institute for Nuclear Power Operations, which is an organization that the industry uses to help itself improve, in addition to the oversight provided by the NRC. Both the nuclear and airline industries have proven safety records. Concerning the waste confidence rule, these dedicated professionals have done analysis to show that storage of the spent fuel and dry storage is safe. Storage either on-site at power plants or off-site is also feasible. And 25 to 35 years is a reasonable estimate for this time period while a longer-term solution is implemented. In addition, spent fuel has been stored safely for decades. The technology is proven and mature and well understood. More well understood than the iPods that we're all using tonight to take pictures. Other countries such as France, Finland, and Sweden have solved this problem and are putting geological repositories in place. Developing final storage rule allowing the off-site storage of spent fuel has a negligible environmental impact. I would also argue that a nuclear technology with a negligible environmental impact is actually a positive impact when compared with fossil fuels, because nuclear does not generate carbon dioxide emissions. Even renewable technologies like solar and wind can increase carbon emissions, since they're often coupled with natural gas turbines to generate electricity when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. I'd like to thank the professionals of the NRC for their hard work developing this rule, and I urge the Commission to approve it.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And then we're going to go to Beverly Kerr and Kitty Richards. This is Dwight Myers.
Good afternoon. My name is Claude Howard. I'm a resident of Burke County. I'm about 10 miles from Plant Vogel. And just by living in that area and watching Plant Vogel as they build the two new reactors, it make you wonder sometimes when, with all the storage, all the spent fuel they already have there, and they're going to build 2 more reactors and put some more spent fuel there, and where is it going? Where is it going to store it at? I'm one of the common people in that area. I was born and raised in that area. And with our politicians and our government, to me it seems as though that they are accepting bribes instead of looking out for the common people, for the people that God put here on this earth for us to protect each other. But through that circumstance, to me, it seems it's all about greed. What can I get for myself? When you stand up there and make those decisions, are you making a decision for yourself, for your personal gain? Are you making a decision for the people? You should be for the people, because that's what this country was built on. We are the people of the United States of America. When you harm me, you harm the whole nation, because we are individuals, but yet we are collective, and we are all God's children. And when you start making decisions for your personal gain and your greed within your heart, may God have mercy on your soul. Thank you.
Kitty Richards.
Hey everybody, my name's Kitty Richards, and many people here today have made and will make very important points on this issue. As for myself, I'm in education because children are the hope of the future. I'm here because radioactive nuclear waste opposes that hope. Ladies and gentlemen, for the sake of time, I don't have a lot to say, but I hope you'll hear everyone who speaks tonight with an open mind, and especially those who are coming from their own home states where nuclear waste is emitted or is created and has been leaking into the environment. The future of our precious planet depends on what you decide to do. The intolerable and deadly effects of nuclear energy shown by Fukushima and the accident that happened there proves that nuclear energy is not safe, it's not clean, and it's not reliable. Just because a major accident hasn't happened yet in the United States doesn't mean it won't, nor does it discount the very real and present threat of all the leaks that are currently occurring in radioactive waste dumps? How can we even consider moving such waste? Risking devastating consequences to people and the environment by radiation poisoning. The poisoning of our land and water cannot be reclaimed. We can't take it back. Let's not make any more mistakes about this. Let's not move any waste, nor make any more waste either. Let's remember the children. What we do will be their reality for generations to come.
Thank you. Is Beverly Kerr here? There's Beverly. Okay. And then we're going to go to Juan Abadano and Deb Aronson and Lee Clark.
Good evening, I'm Beverly Kerr. I come from Alamance County, North Carolina. I work for Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League. I'm also a volunteer with Neighborhood Environment Watch, which is an Alamance County chapter of the league. Misleading and biased information is being given to the public here. The NRC and the industry is ignoring real-world, multiple risk factors. We all know that waste cannot be contained for as long as it poses a hazard. We see that nuclear plants are becoming permanent waste dumps. This increases the need for a safer storage plan. Irradiated fuel pools are dramatically overcrowded and not protected. At least minimize the risk of storage of irradiated fuel by placing it below ground and get it out of cooling pools like those at Sharon Harris near Raleigh. Sharon Harris's 4 cooling pools are the largest in the United States and represent one of the greatest risks at nuclear plants because they are so overcrowded with so much highly irradiated material. Remember, while flooding and risk of leakage threatens our vital drinking water supplies, we must also be concerned about water loss from earthquakes, dropping of fuel casks, aircraft impact, accidental fires and explosions. Any and all of these threats could easily lead to an irradiated fuel fire. Everyone agrees, there's no argument that a radiological release from a pool fire could dwarf that of a nuclear meltdown. So, how far away is safe? 10 miles is the industry standard, but our own U.S. government sets the distance for Americans in Japan at least 50 miles away. Just imagine trying to conduct an evacuation under real emergency conditions like those we've seen in other countries. Emergency planning has not been advanced over the years and must be expanded from 10 to 50 miles. State and local governments are responsible for all emergency response outside of nuclear plant gates. Outside the gates is where the industry's responsibility ends. Keep nuclear waste on site where it is created. As soon as it leaves the nuclear plant property, then whose responsibility is it? Is that why the industry wants to move irradiated nuclear waste around and cloud the issue of who pays the bill when an accident occurs? I agree with the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League, who says, if you make it and profit by it, then you keep it. If you can't maintain it, then stop making it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And Juan. And then Deb Aronson and Lee Clark.
Howdy. My name is Juan Abendano. I'm an electrical engineer. I'm a graduate from Texas A&M University. I've been in the industry for over 6.5 years. and I never thought I'd be in nuclear power. My sophomore summer in college, I was presented with the opportunity to intern at a nuclear power plant in Texas. I took that opportunity, and day in and day out, I saw how people worked at the nuclear power plant. They're so safety conscious, it's ingrained in their mind. You see, they have daughters, sons, mothers and fathers, grandfathers. They have grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And each day, when I asked them, what makes you work here? They said, you know, I'm concerned about the future of my kids and their kids. And by me working here, I can guarantee that things are done right, safely, efficiently, and that's why I'm here. And that is why I'm in the nuclear industry. I'm looking for my kids in the future. I want them to be safe, and that's why I work in the industry. You know that 104 nuclear power plants have been running safely for the past 40 years? For those 40 years, we have safely stored spent fuel on site. You can take all that spent fuel, or used fuel if you will, and stack it end to end on a football field. From end to end, about 20 feet high. That's all the waste we have. Now we also have the technology to recycle. We can take that and diminish it down several times over. So we have that technology. So do you think we can safely store now, in the past, now and in the future? You're darn right we can. And this is why I'm also in the industry. I'm looking to keep that new technology coming. As an electrical engineer, I want to contribute to that technology, to that safeness of our industry. I implore you guys to go out and look at the facts. Look at the facts of what is actually going on in the nuclear industry. I implore you to look for yourselves, look to other people who are in the industry, and you'll find out the real truth. We're a safe industry. We've safely stored our fuel in the past, today, and in the future. And I implore the NRC to pass the GEIS as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mom.
Hi, I'm Deb Arneson, and just to start this off with something I hadn't planned to say, and thank you, Juan, but it occurs to me that everyone in favor of nuclear energy and these generic waste rules has a job in the industry. I'm going to quote you from Upton Sinclair, I think. The surest way to keep a man in ignorance is if his job depends on him not knowing. Okay. Anyway, I have zero confidence in the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to address the risks of nuclear waste disposal near my home here on the North Carolina-South Carolina border. I have been studying the nuclear waste situation for the past 20 years, having lived in the shadow of nuclear energy plants both here in North Carolina and previously in Florida, and also being made to pay for them in advance, even if they don't come online. Now that's my own added. I have attended conferences to deal with this issue and have heard former government employees say that this area of the southern U.S., at least a 5-state radius, has been referred to as a nuclear sacrifice zone. I wonder if you ever heard that. I've heard it several times. After Fukushima and in the light of Yucca Mountain not being licensed, which I think is a good thing, I am unwilling to add nuclear fuel to the radioactive fires by permitting either 1, more costly nuclear power plants generating more nuclear waste, or 2, any vague rules being applied to the centuries-long storage of hazardous nuclear waste. Personally, I believe the current waste must be safely stored in place, hardened, and that no new waste be generated until and unless there is a reliable way to deal with the existing waste. Solar, wind, and geothermal energy are quite feasible to become our primary energy sources, according to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commissioner, John Wellinghoff. We should be following Germany's lead to convert to renewable sources by 2020. All NRC licensing, planning, and permitting should be directed towards the phase-out of nuclear energy and existing nuclear waste storage safety. Then you can change your name to the Renewables Regulatory Commission, the RRC, and you can all keep your jobs. I was going to stop with that, but I have to add a joke. I can't leave it on such a heavy heavy, depressing spot. So what do you call a solar energy spill? A sunrise. And, and what do you call a solar energy waste? A sunset. Gone in half a day, not half a millennium. Thank you.
Thanks, and we're going to take two more, and then we're going to take a little break. You've been wonderful, wonderful community, and we'll just take a short break, 10 minutes, and then we're going to come back and finish up, and we should be done by 11 o'clock. And Jean Larson and Laura Sorensen, we're going to hear after Lee. Lee.
Thank you for hanging around. My name is Lee Causey. I am a mechanical engineer. I work for Duke Energy, and I'm here tonight as a member of the North American Young Generation of Nuclear. And it sounds like many people came here to talk, and I appreciate that. I actually came here to listen today, and many of you were nice enough to stop by our NAYGN table right outside and offer some great comments. And I appreciate that. But first, let me start off with returning to the environmental impact statement. I will briefly say that I do endorse the NRC's environmental impact statement, and I've worked at a number of nuclear plants now. I've been in the business for 5 years, and I have complete confidence in the NRC to continue to provide robust, safe, and reliable regulatory oversight and rules for our industry. That includes the storage of nuclear fuel waste. However, I do feel that there are a couple points that were made that deserve to be reiterated that everyone here can share. The first one is, all of us agree there is a huge problem with nuclear waste. I've heard the number 70,000 and 80,000 tons used today. The number I had before I came here was 70,000. That is a significant amount of waste. And we do not have a great long-term plan about how to deal with this. It is not part of the short-term solution provided in the environmental impact statement we have before us. I think we can also agree that we need a plan, even if you decide to end all nuclear immediately or keep nuclear going forever. This is a problem we're going to face, and we will need a solution for it. So what do you do? As I mentioned earlier, I have complete confidence in the NRC. I've worked under the regulations for 5 years now, and really, it's a marvel. In the same way that, thank you. I'll skip a little bit then, thank you for the warning. I think that we should focus our energy on solving this large problem we have before us. I recommend to the NRC that they continue to review and take the insight of the Blue Ribbon Commission report. And I hope that you will continue to review and look into new nuclear technology as it develops, new facilities, and pursue active licensing and active regulations to make sure we continue to operate things safely. I think both sides can agree that we need to solve this problem, and I think we need to look for solutions from your industry, and I wish you the best of luck. I will continue to stay in this industry as long as I can under your guidance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, and then we're going to go to Laura Sorensen.
Good evening. My name is Jean Larson. I live in Sandy Mush, North Carolina. It's a mountain farming community with rich soil, woods, pristine beauty. We live by the seasons. We plant, we harvest, we return nutrients to the earth to ensure an ongoing abundance. We know the fields, the woods. We know the wild animals that live there and where they live. Some families have been living in farming in Sandy Mush continuously from the time that their ancestors got a land grant from the king in the 1700s. We know our neighbors. We watch out for each other. We help each other in the fields. during storms, when someone is sick. We share when we have an abundance of fruit or vegetables. We are a community, a generous and a happy community. Imagine our surprise, our bewilderment to learn in the 1980s of a proposal to turn this pristine community into a nuclear waste repository. Not surprisingly, people who passionately love their home and know how to work hard together were able to save Sandy Mush. But I have some questions for you today on deciding what to do with the accumulated nuclear waste. Who is your neighbor? Do you know your neighbors? We do not dump on our neighbors in Sandy Mush. Why is more nuclear waste being created when we do not know what to do with what we already have? We do not make a mess for our neighbors in Sandy Mush. We do not use toxic materials that can run off into others' fields. It is not neighborly. How are you protecting your neighbors? Are you prepared to handle a situation like the one now in Fukushima? If you are not, who is? Who is protecting our neighbors? Your neighbors, all neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Laura Sorensen. I'm with Safe Carolinas. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I brought folks here because we really care about this issue. I also brought with me in this envelope about 90 people who have signed letters who could not make the bus trip with us this far. So I will give that to you all. In our area, we face major water issues. The draft GEIS does not address water safety issues as reactor site specific and does not include the necessary data collection needed to take a realistic look at our situation. Here are only a few examples. The nuclear power stations Catawba and McGuire give us 4 nuclear reactors located on drinking water reservoirs within 20 miles of downtown Charlotte. They're the largest water users on the Catawba River, a river that has been ranked the 4th most stressed river in the United States by the Union of Concerned Scientists, and made the Southern Environmental Law Center's list of the top 10 most endangered places in the Southeast. Other reports have quoted, by 2040, there will not be enough water in the Catawba River to meet all the water demands. Most people don't realize that more water is used to generate power for their home than is directly used in a household. The Oconee Nuclear Station shut down October 24th due to water issues. This plant faces serious dam issues and has had 14 high-level violations since 2000. For those of you who don't know, that's a heck of a lot. It took an NRC whistleblower for Duke and the NRC to do anything about it. That doesn't give me confidence. And the proposed W.S. Lee nuclear plant, Gaffney, they have to really compensate for the small Broad River. That dries up in the summer. You can just walk across it. Yet Duke and the NRC think it's okay to just build 20 miles downstream of Cliffside. Then down to the south, you've got 3 reactors at VC Summer and Jenkinville's. We want you to have the same logic as the court and say, we're not going to license this plant. We don't want any more nuclear power. So for the sake of timing, my point is, our waters, they're not going to keep up with this. According to the Government Accountability Office, the amount of spent stored fuel on site at commercial nuclear reactors will increase by 2,000 metric tons a year, doubling to about 140 metric tons before it can be moved off-site because storage and disposal facilities may take decades to develop. Then with the centralized and permanent disposal, 50 to 40 years before they get ready for that. We are kicking the can down the road. As a grandma, I'm pleading for the 6,000 generations that we will be stuck with this horrible handmade substance. Do you ever sit down and think about the children of Fukushima? I do. I sit there and cry. I can't imagine being the mother of any of these children that are infected by it. So when industry stands up here and tells me it's safe, an industry of the United States that built those reactors, it really makes me angry. It's hurtful and it's embarrassing.
And I'm going to have to ask you to...
Yeah, I'm done. So anyway, I say to you, you should try sitting down and contemplating these kids. Try crying. It'll bring a little blood up to your brain. Maybe that'll open your mind.
All right. Thank you. Well, we're going to take a break for about 7 minutes or so.
Not subsidize keeping them good now. No confidence, no more permits, no more faith-based science. Let the high priest of the nuclear temples go live in the steel and concrete vaults with the existing waste so as to commune with their God. Every dollar they seek to extract from us to propagate their faith is a dollar taken from non-lethal energy development. Every step they force our societies to take on their march to a nuclear future is a step to the obliteration of a living world. They don't have the right. And for some irony here, the security about transporting nuclear waste mentions crashing into high-speed concrete barriers, water immersion, 30-foot drop, severe impact, extreme heat. The last 20 years we've been using depleted uranium artillery and tank rounds in a part of the world where we are despised. Let's take a 10 to 20-foot piece of steel pipe of a matching diameter or caliber. Let's improvise a breach in it. Let's put one of those depleted uranium rounds in there with a charge. Let's have a improvised firing mechanism, and you've created an improvised recoilless rifle. And it can penetrate any steel and concrete building or shipping cast because that's what those rounds were made to do. So there's the security.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ed. Arthur?
Hey y'all, my name is Larkin Diem, and today I'm here to speak up for what I believe to be an underrepresented population. I'm here to represent all the anomalous creatures out there that support and thrive off of nuclear waste. If our nation was ever to abandon the nuclear power that has so faithfully supplied us with the precious energy that nourishes our comforts and warms our microwavable dinners, we might be allowing the one-eyed, one-horned, flag-purple people eaters to slip into extinction forever. There's also been claims amongst world-renowned cryptozoologists that the endangered and extremely rare chupacabra may also perish without nuclear waste, along with our heroic population of mutant vigilante superheroes. Oh, the tragedy. Of course, these creatures will most likely be able to survive at a dwindling rate for the next millennia of our current radioactive waste, but we have to think ahead for future generations of mutants and vigilante superheroes. Increasing our demand for nuclear energy is perhaps the only viable solution to their dwindling population and the rapidly increasing humanoid population. Now I understand there is some concern for the health of non-mutant normies out there. I believe the repetitive exposure of radiation in smaller doses has extremely protective benefits. So remember, visit your dentist, radiologist, and local airport scanner as much as possible. And for the nuclear family with lower income who would not be able to afford such frequent visits to a professional administrator of small-scale radiation, a trip to the ocean would be an apt substitute. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Claire? And
hello, everyone. I'm an executive director of my own 65 years. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, at the nuclear crossroads in the Western Mountains, in atomic Appalachia, where the deadly twins of nuclear weapons and nuclear power collide. I was raised in Tennessee, a nuclear waste sacrifice zone, where it is buried in landfills, burned in incinerators. The South is a sacrifice zone. I'm here to raise my voice as an elder, a grandmother, and a conscious person, a part of this sacred earth. And with all due respect, I have no confidence in the NRC to regulate this dangerous industry. I have no faith in your so-called generic EIS waste confidence for hundreds of thousands of years. This is a room full of high-paid, career, corporate, true believers in an industry subsidized by corporate welfare. And to you workers there, all in your red t-shirts and other uniforms, you know the EPA has drastically reduced standards for radiation protection, so beware. What they tell you is safe is not necessarily safe. There is no safe level of radiation. We know this. It's more waste and less protection. So stop producing this waste. Hardened on-site storage for those 70,000 tons. This industry is itself one that continues to produce poisons. You, perhaps, are the real terrorists. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to Eric, Ellen, Thomas, and TJ.
My name is Carol Gant, and I'm here to speak for myself and my neighbors who were unable to attend. I am deeply concerned that our community is continuing to create more toxic, high-level nuclear waste every day.
Okay, closer, please, Carol, to the mic.
Is that better?
Yes.
When we have no means to dispose of it in a safe and functional way. It is so toxic that exposure for a short period of time can kill. I cannot see the reason we are continuing to create this waste when we have viable renewable alternatives. Nuclear energy cannot be called clean energy with its waste issues. Consider the dangers of Fukushima. With no solution in sight, and for over 2.5 years, radioactive elements have been polluting the air and the ocean and affecting many people, animals, plants, and this earth. There are so many problems with nuclear waste, I cannot address all of them in the time I have to speak. So I will talk about consolidating the waste around the country at temporary sites with the plan to move to a permanent storage facility. As of 2010, nuclear power plants have already generated 70,000 tons of spent fuel. The industry is moving towards new fuel types such as MOX and high burnup fuels, which are more radioactive, dangerous, thermally hot, and difficult to store and transport. Again, I will say we have no way to deal with high-level nuclear waste. To say a consolidated storage area is the answer just creates more problems. The prospect of transporting this waste across our country by rail, boats, and trucks is frightening. The American Transportation Research Institute, headquartered in Arlington, Virginia, is part of the American Trucking Associations Federation and a 501c3 not-for-profit research organization. They published a report in May 2013, which stated for the year 2010, there were 35,000 large trucks involved in crashes in the United States. If 0.001% of the accidents are trucks transporting high-level nuclear waste, that would be 35 a year. The potential damage caused by just one truck transporting high-level nuclear waste involved in a worst-case scenario accident with the container cracking and possible fire and the waste spilling and contaminating our land, our streams, innocent people and animals in the area, and those sitting in the traffic caused by the accident could be deadly and render the area uninhabitable for decades. With all the talent and expertise in our country, we could be looking for ways to protect the people and the environment by focusing on renewable energy sources rather than continuing with an energy source that creates toxic waste that kills and destroys.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Eric Levin, Helen Thomas, TJ Amos. Then we're going to go to Jim Hennon, Nicholas Wood, and William Murphy. This is Eric Levin.
Hello, my name is Eric Levins. I was born in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Hopefully, most of y'all know the significance of that. Now I live on the Cumberland Plateau in Tennessee, not too far from the Watts Bar nuclear reactor, the last reactor completed in this country. They were going to build 2 there, but they abandoned 1 because they went so far over budget, which is pretty common with this industry. And currently at that reactor, they are making tritium and using it to maintain the stockpile of U.S. nuclear weapons, which is really shameful when they should be destroying those. And the tritium is getting into the water of the Tennessee River and affecting that ecosystem as well. And they're currently trying to finish that reactor that they abandoned so many years ago. The Tennessee Valley Authority is one of the sites where they're constructing a new reactor. And there's no safe way to store this, obviously. There's radioactive material that gets out in any way that they store it. So it needs to stop being made. And storing it on site in the dry cask is not safe, but it's a lot less dangerous than transporting it on our roads to go store it somewhere else. In Tennessee, they have these electronic signs over the highway that show how many roadway fatalities we've had, and it's over 800 this year. So there's no reason to think it's safe to be transporting this stuff. There will be accidents inevitably, and even without accidents, the radioactive elements are getting through the containment structures that they're transporting it in. Some of these elements they're created for nuclear fission get through steel and concrete. And according to the NRC, the EPA, and the National Academy of Sciences, there's no safe dose of radiation, so we need to stop making it since we don't know how to store it without getting it in the environment. And even if we stored it deep underground, that's the environment too, and that stuff has a way of coming to the surface, and some of these elements are hazardous for millions of years, and the geology changes over that period of time, and we don't know what's going to happen to those areas that we're storing it in. So we need to keep it on the surface where we can keep an eye on it and try to maintain it as best we can. Let's see. Also, I just wanted to bring up the fact that according to the National Academy of Sciences data, female-bodied people and children are more impacted by doses of radiation than other folks are, so perhaps they should have more of a say in what's being done with this stuff. And I don't think the environmental impact statement, I haven't read the whole thing, obviously, but I'm not sure it addresses uranium mining and how that's related to this. And a lot of that has gone on indigenous land in this country, and they're wanting to do more of that. And folks have been talking about what a good record the industry has, but I don't know if folks remember 3 Mile Island, or the largest release of radioactive material in the country's history, which also was in '79 in the Puerto River on indigenous territory. And just, I guess I just have one more thing to the NRC, whether you're pretending to be confident that you know how to safely deal with this stuff, or you really feel confident, you just need to stop it. So.
All right. Thank you. This is Ellen. And then TJ.
Hi, I'm Ellen Thomas from Western North Carolina, and I'm here in part to speak on behalf of a 93-year-old woman activist who has been working to stop the nuclear craziness for over 40 years, Ruth Thomas, who couldn't make it tonight. We agree with those who ask the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to stop building new nuclear facilities stop extending the licenses of existing nuclear power plants, don't expose the nuclear workers and the public by transporting nuclear waste until and unless there is a final resting place. At present, hardened on-site storage seems to be the only solution, even though it obviously cannot be the final answer for safe storage that must last for thousands of years. This seems to indicate that the only sane approach would be to stop producing nuclear waste. In 70 years of producing nuclear weapons and nuclear energy, we have found no way to dispose of the radioactive waste created that will not continue to threaten life on Earth. Attorneys and their consultants, some of whom brought the lawsuit against the NRC, which led to this hearing today, back up their criticism with numerous examples of the NRC's failure to comply with federal laws, faulty decision-making practices, and poor operating histories. The NRC fails to abide by the intent, language, and provisions of the Atomic Energy Act and the National Environmental Policy Act. Throughout the scoping process for the EIS and the meetings and teleconferences which followed, we observed that the inputs from the public interest viewpoint rarely were acknowledged as being useful or of value to those working on developing a nuclear waste plan, even recommendations and evidence offered by knowledgeable scientists. On the other hand, Nuclear Energy Institute and other nuclear industry representatives received favorable acceptance. The NRC ignores the differences between reactors in terms of age, type, site location, ownership, history of problems, accidents, violations. These differences should prohibit the NRC from taking a generic approach to a spent nuclear fuel storage proposal. Each reactor should be considered in terms of its own problems. The NRC has failed and continues to fail to recognize the long-term damaging effects of radiation from numerous sources. We encourage the NRC decision makers this time to give full consideration to all the inherent negative aspects of adding more radiation to an environment already forever polluted by the dropping and testing of nuclear weapons.
I have to ask you to finish up.
Okay, this is my last sentence. Routine or accidental releases from nuclear power plants and weapons complexes, enrichment facilities and supporting operations, and the release of radiation during and after hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, and other natural disasters. Okay. Remember Fukushima.
Thank you.
And please pay close attention to what everybody has to say and not just the people in the industry.
My name is TJ Amos. I'm here from Asheville. I'm trained as a therapist, so one of the things I find fascinating is when I hear people rationalizing and minimalizing. And that's exactly what I heard when I heard the comment that waste management is only a small part of what they deal with. It's a pretty big part of it. There are many waste. There are good reasons, but I'm a mother. What caught my attention is our hubris that we could make nuclear waste safe for 10,000 years. We are thinking the unthinkable. This is not the first time the hubris of humans has promised the impossible. Remember the date, April 14th, 1912? That is when the unsinkable Titanic sank. For that hubris, 1,500 people paid with their lives. The World Trade Center was completed in 1987. The builders believed the buildings would never be destroyed. That hubris is now called a failure of imagination. 2,977 people paid with their lives. But that is just a number. My number is 1. My fiance Jonathan died in the South Tower that day. Fukushima is a cautionary tale, but yet we have failed to heed its warning. The investigation of the Fukushima disaster found that the regulatory bodies, NISA and NSC, and the government body promoting the nuclear power industry, METI, failed to correctly develop the most basic safety requirements, failed to assess the probability of damage, failed to adequately prepare for contained collateral damage, failed to develop a realistic evacuation plan. The official investigation determined those failures. Today at this hearing, we are considering the promise of safety by A, a repository available by 2050, B, institutional control forevermore, C, replacing storage containers every 100 years forevermore. Have we learned nothing from the hubris of humans in history? Are we promising the impossible? Do we dare? Yes, we need energy, but at what cost? We are asking future generations to store the unstorable for thousands of years. We are asking for our children's children to bear this burden. What will they think of us? I am asking that our hubris not put our children at risk.
Thank you.